Kamran Pasha joins us once again here on Midnight's Edge in the Morning. Greetings, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, where you're at. Welcome to Midnight's Edge in the Morning. I'm Tom Connors. With me, as always, is the boss man, Andre. How you doing?
Greetings, everyone. I am good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Doing the best I can with what I got, and that's all they're getting out of me. With us, as always, is one great guest. We have almost every week now, but we're glad to have him. Kamran Pasha, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Tom, and thank you, Andre, for having me on. And, it's always fun to be on this channel, and I love becoming a regular guest here. I think, like I said, I think this is the best channel that's in YouTube, and I think you've got an amazing audience, and I think they're already revved up to talk today. So.
Absolutely. Well, Sander asks, did anybody else troll the Star Trek anniversary stream? I avoided it, but we did talk about it last night. Mike, the Mexican Iron Man, and Script Doctor put their bodies on the line for Midnight's Edge, and they watched it all. And boy, was it a doozy. So if you want to hear us break that down a little bit, check that out. But we didn't show any footage or nothing because CBS was a little strike happy. They were out there getting everybody yesterday. So we're like, nope, we're not showing anything, not much at all. We showed like 2 pictures, and that was it. But other than that, Andre, did you keep up with any of that Star Trek stuff?
Not so much, no. I don't know why I would subject myself to like such a horrendous dream by the very people that destroyed Star Trek, and then they try to celebrate it. But I do see it from their point of view, though, because from their point of view, they have fixed it. They have made it into their utopia. It just so happens that their utopia corresponds with everyone else's dystopia. I think that's kind of like the cue to understand what's actually happened to Star Trek.
So, well, what breaks my heart is that there's people who actually still have hope that this is going to go anywhere good. It's like you just said, Andre, they have accomplished exactly what they set out to accomplish. That is to get rid of all the old white men, and in the process, they've gotten rid of all the old fans. But let's just forget the fact that they just ignored that the old fans were not just old white men. But hey, they accomplished that. They got rid of all the fans. So,
well, I mean, it's a deeper issue, which is yes, it's everything that Tom has said. But it's also that the Gene Roddenberry's philosophy is offensive to this cast of characters, right? Who are currently, driving this thing far off the cliff. It's, his vision of this idealistic world of a humanity moving forward is actually a true, quote, progressive vision, right? And it's a world where humanity has essentially solved many of its internal issues and is now facing those issues that it resolved out in the galaxy, right? And is trying to actually bring the best ideals of humanity into a world, into cosmos that needs that.
Alongside white men, that's problematic.
Yeah. And that's not, as we see politically, many people that call themselves progressives are actually regressives. They want to turn the clock back because if the world is a great place, as in Roddenberry suggesting that Earth is a great place in the 21st century, then what is there to fix, right? And so these people whose ideology is to come in and be saviors have nothing to fix, and so they have to break things in order to have something to fix.
Yeah, and Robert Meyer Burnett had a lot to say about that as well, so I suggest you check out his words about it as well. And then Hyperguyver sent us a super chat here.
Yeah, and he says that's because they lost their fate of the heart, which is a nice reference, right?
Well, there. I think between the hosts, which I mean, Mike and Script are being very diplomatic about, I must say, considering how bad a job they did. But they didn't really pull no punches about the band that was there. They're like, one of them that commented that they had been practicing all day, and they were like, yeah, it showed that they've been practicing for one day. I guess they did a piss poor job, but it was
they don't have the
all around.
Yeah, look, I've been following the drama inside of Star Trek for a while, And a couple of young writers that I worked with on our show, they went over to Star Trek at the very earliest moments when it had just been announced, and and Brian Fuller was leading it, whatever. And I think they're still there, and they're just keeping their heads low. And it's just, I watched it, as just internally from writers and hearing writers talk to each other. He went through, Mr. Fuller basically just took off, right? And I heard a lot of very interesting stories about how he was brought on because the industry, many of the industry sees him as this genius, and he was brought on. And the stories I was hearing early on was pretty like the writers would come in, and Mr. Fuller is very much an artist. He's very much a non-linear thinker, and so they would show up and all be ready to go, and he'd be like, guys, I'm not feeling it. I don't feel inspired today. Everyone just go home. And like, what? That's not how you work on a TV show. TV shows, whether you're inspired or not, you got to schedule, got to create it, right? And so that went on for like about a year and a half, and the people eventually said, well, where the hell's the show, right? And so they let him go, and then they brought on some other showrunners, and that didn't work out. And they were let go. It was a showrunner team, and I know
there might have been a reason why he didn't feel inspired. So as we've
maybe what he was given, maybe what he was being given to play with wasn't something that he could do anything with. And then other showrunners were brought in, some more practical, people who were the sort of just get it done types, and they were let go. And the official word, a lot of rumors came out in the industry, were put out there in the trades, whatever, that they had a bad relationship with some of the writers, blah blah blah. I heard the opposite. I heard that they were actually very competent and very good, but I think they probably were pretty strong-willed in their opinions and started messing around with the direction that was being presented to them. And they were let go. So eventually we had a situation where people were like, all right, let's just make this the way these guys want to make it, and this is the end result, right? But this was a long process of people resisting what was being given them until nobody resisted it, and here we are. It's like the Borg, you will be assimilated. This is the new Star Trek.
That's what we've pointed out before, that behind the scenes of Star Trek, there are many, many writers who individually are talented. But when they work together on that, crap comes out that we know is far beneath their ability, which only goes to show that there is someone higher up there pulling the strings, or giving some kind of creative direction, or creating some kind of atmosphere of fear in which true creativity cannot thrive, and where everyone basically just have to censor themselves and go with the given narrative, no matter how nonsensical or antithetical to proper Star Trek that may be. And that's where we are.
Yeah. And if I recall correctly, if I remember correctly, this was a couple of years back. I believe there was the incident. I believe it was on Star Trek. I know there was definitely this incident, but I'm pretty sure it was on Star Trek, where there was a well-respected African-American writer, old school writer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And he, as we writers do, sit in a writer's room, we tell personal stories to give context to the ideas that we're presenting, right, and the characters. And so he gave a story about how he had been disrespected and called the N-word by somebody, and he was let go for using the N-word in the room. He's like, I'm telling a story as a black man of how that word was used against me, and trying to give context to whatever that story issue that was he was raising. And some young kid in the room said, you can't say that, and they called human resources. And instead of acting rationally, because of the culture that had been created, and now by then a culture of fear, because multiple showrunners had been let go before this thing had even been put on the air, right? And so there was a culture of absolute fear amongst the writers, and they just let this guy go in the most shameful, humiliating fashion, which it's just, the fact that they would, instead of realizing maybe the problem is this woke 22-year-old kid who doesn't have a brain, who's creating drama, maybe you need to let that person out of the office, right? Firing a black man for telling his personal story of racism, that's okay. So that reveals what was valuable to the power structure of the people making the show, which was this new, they thought that 22-year-old kid is their audience, and they're catering for that kid, and that kid is a moron. Right? And so they're making the show for morons.
Yeah, indeed they are. But someone who is not morons are the people here in our audience, or our esteemed guests. And on that note, Justin Trudeau says for €5, always love seeing Kamran. Matrix 4's main problem doesn't appear to be wokeness, but brokenness. It looks so cheaply made and has terrible CGI. Well,
No,
I don't know about that. Tom, do you agree that it looks really cheaply made and with terrible CGI?
I don't know about that part so much as it's just this is what I've been saying. Maybe this is, and again, at least this is the way I felt about it. I didn't think the CGI was bad so much as what are they going to show us that we haven't already seen?
I think that's the bigger issue.
Because like that's the thing that made the original Matrix, besides its story, kind of unique, was that it, took the special effects at the time to a whole new level. And I don't see that in this film. Like, what can they really do that we haven't seen already? Right? Like, there's nothing this movie can do at this point that they didn't advertise it in that trailer. I mean, you had bullet time and some pretty advanced CGI for the time, and I just don't see what the gimmick they're going to hold this on other than the member berries. And it didn't really do nothing for me. I did not really get anything out of the trailer. And as far as the CGI goes, I thought it looked fine, but it just didn't.
Well, as some wit said in one of the trades, they highlighted the comment in the comment section. What's John Wick doing in the middle of the Matrix? Right?
Yeah, that was my other issue. I mean, at least when he did Bill and Ted, he shaved and tried to make himself look like Ted. Mm-hmm. Here, he's doing nothing to try and make himself look like Neo. And even if he's trying to go with a different look, don't do the John Wick thing. Do something different, right? Like, just. I don't know. It just didn't work for me either.
Yeah, to me, it looks like, as it is right now, John Wick is like the program that Neo was sent back into in the Matrix. All of the John Wick trilogy is like Neo with his memory wiped, living out a new identity within the Matrix. That's kind of like what I was like thinking while seeing that trailer.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't see it being anything.
We'll talk about that in the course of this live stream today, because I'm only going off the trailer, but definitely I have questions about what the hell is this thing. So yeah.
And that, of course, I believe is intentional. But we have some more super chats and some more lovely people watching, and loads of other things to talk about as well. Stephen Alton says, "Hail Andre, Tom, Kamran, Wrenches, and chat. Curious to see why the Russos are being blamed for Black Widow's failure, a movie they had nothing to do with."
Well, we're going to talk about that because
we will.
I think it's because they're being. Why would they be blamed? It's because they put their chips on Disney leadership because they're smart and they recognize that Feige is no longer going to be the king of the mountain as he thinks he is. And so these two smart guys who have risen up very rapidly, and we can talk about some of the choices they made in Endgame, which undercut what was going on with Captain Marvel and that character, because they knew what was happening inside of Marvel and they didn't like it. And so they embarrassed Feige with a couple of jokes to Captain Marvel's expense in that movie. And so I think they've put their chips in with Bob Chapek because they're smart and they understand what's happening here. And unlike, with no disrespect to actors, a lot of actors just want to be in the cool club, and Mr. Feige looks like the president of the cool club. These guys are directors. They're strategic, intelligent people who are used to being independent and seeing the world as it really is, rather than the world as the cool cafeteria crowd is telling them it is, right? So the fact they will be blamed because they've made it clear they're not allies with Mr. Feige, and I think they made that clear in Avengers Endgame. I think whatever issues they have started there when they wouldn't bow to Mr. Feige and some of the choices he was already forcing them to deal with. So they're on the board with Disney. Chapek is going to survive this, and Disney is the future, not particularly Mr. Feige. And so that's very telling that they're being blamed because the war is, now the sides of the war are becoming delineated, and the cool kids are in one camp and the smart kids are in another camp, and the smart kids will win.
Yeah, we're going to get back into that and add some more context to it when we bring in the Doctor Strange actor who's also spoken out and everything like that. So yeah, we'll have some more context for you on that a little bit later on. Before that, though, we have a couple more super chats, and also smash that like and help share the stream. Because YouTube doesn't always do a great job with that. So please let everyone know that we're here. And Tom, you have to say this name.
Rod Thunderheart.
And he says, "Hail Andre, hail Tom, hail Kamran. Do you think if No Way Home is Spider-Man Endgame, will Sony pack up and go to their own Spider-Verse?" That's a very interesting question. And it's something that we have spoken about before. But before repeating our take on that, Kamran, what do you think? Do you think that the multiverse is a great opportunity for Sony to, if they decide, okay, let's not renew anymore, we now have established our adjacent Spider-Man Sony cinematic universe, whatever they called it, as a parallel universe, or it's going to go and continue here, or will they continue in the MCU? What say you?
Well, it's going to depend on whatever their contractual things are that are deep in the contracts between those two companies about how they're dealing with this. It's my instinct is it probably would be smart for Sony to take this hero that they actually were quite successful with before Endgame, even before Marvel was even a player, right? I mean, the Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man came out in 2002. Right, and that was essentially almost a decade before Marvel became a factor, and so they at least the first one was a very good movie, and they certainly started the trend of superhero movies, I would think. So they have a heritage and a history with this character that I think it is smart of them, especially if they are plugged into what is happening in the internal dynamics of Marvel and Disney, to get away and take control of this thing, because who the hell knows what's going to happen with Marvel, except that it's going to go through a tumultuous time, and they know they've got a valuable character here. Why get it pulled into the drama of what they're witnessing? I would pull away if I could, and this definitely gives them the chance to do it.
Not going to happen.
Okay, well, I think it should happen. Whether it's not going to happen, we'll see. But I think this
Tom
is their
Rothman. Basically, now if it was Amy Pascal in charge, that would happen. She's been trying to do the Spider-Verse thing since the beginning. Rothman, on the other hand, I don't think he wants anything to do with it, and he's more than happy to let Kevin Feige make billion-dollar movies for him. Why? Because Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's why.
Well, fair enough. Look, I think your analysis of Mr. Rothman is correct, but I'm just saying that there's something happening here that even the industry is beginning to notice. We're seeing, this brings us to the topic that's a big topic for our day, which is that there is a civil war much bigger than what was happening with Lucasfilm. There's a much bigger problem that's happening between Marvel and the bosses at the big bosses at Disney. And Rothman, if nothing else, is a political monster, and he survived decades in the studio system, so he knows something's going on. And now that it's spilling into talent and it's spilling into the public is aware something's happening, I think if I were his advisor, I'd be like, boss, take this and run, because these guys are about to go through hell. He may not, but that's the advice I would give him.
And also, he kind of have set it up already with Venom, which is a movie that actually was greenlit by him, and that's it's a Sony movie, all in all. At least the first one was a pure Sony movie, although Feige did consult on it, and they actually took some of his advice, and that may have been part of the reason why it helped.
PG-13 too.
Yeah, I think that Sony had pretty good incentive to do that all on their own, but yeah, he probably didn't help in that regard. But yeah, that's part of the reason why they have their own Venom verse and Morbius verse and all other spin-off verse that are their stuff, because.
But the Morbius movie is connected with the MCU, though.
Yeah, only retroactively fit it. It's still part of their own thing. It's not like an MCU thing. They've made some subtle.
Well, Michael Keaton's
do that thing. Yeah, but Michael Keaton, he's like a holdover from the amazing from the first Spider-Man movie, which you will recall was made, which is a Sony movie made by Marvel Studios, but they were a contracted studio. So it's complex.
I don't think he's going anywhere because we're getting all this Secret Wars business. They're setting up.
He's probably they did a deal extension. They did a deal, but it wasn't a permanent extension. It's an extension for a certain number of movies, and then we'll see exactly where Marvel is the week when that is due for renewal. I think that's going to determine. But if Marvel is still like floating, I think it's more likely that it's going to be renewed than that it won't be renewed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just remember they didn't hear from him for 6 months, and then the Ethereum Into the Spider-Verse came out, which was well received, but it's still the lowest grossing Spider-Man movie of all time. So I think Rothman took that into consideration, and he's like, no, I don't want to deal with this. And, gave it over to Feige and said, here you go. And I think that's the way it's kind of been since. And I feel that with the Morbius trailer was like the first time I seen that. And then now we're seeing all these classic characters come in, and I think that's what broke down the 25% different wall in quotations that we've talked about as well, where now they have access to those other characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, those versions in that case, and I think it's they're gonna build this Sinister Six out of these characters, and then they're gonna do the Secret Wars, and they're gonna do their own Spider-Verse thing. But I don't think that Rothman's gonna let them detach from MCU unless it goes real south real fast.
And I think it may go real south real fast. We're gonna talk about that.
It may, but
I think Mr. Feige is playing a very dangerous game that's breaking apart the allegiances inside the old Marvel. And it's not a game that I think he's thought out properly, and we're seeing repercussions that are coming that I don't think he planned.
Yeah, and you could be right. And Grand Wazoo here sends in €5 to say greeting and salutations, seer, which generally you have the ability to see the future. So
yes, exactly.
Well, we're going to get to a deadline article today where yet again one of my prophecies came true. So we'll get to
prophecy from last week, even like if this and if we do like a shorter clip of this, we'll be sure to start off with the prediction, which came true inside of a week.
Yeah,
those are like the best ones. But yeah, and Darius Münchhausen also had a super sticker, so thank you so much for that. And Tom, were there any other classic super chats that you can get up on screen?
I got Joe Pat 87 for $4.99 here, who's also a member. Thank you for that. Says, bonjour, Monsieur Cameron. It's always a pleasure hearing you drop your insight and confirming for us the inherent artifice of Hollywood, if I could speak this morning.
Yeah. I mean, it is, as a film school professor of mine once said to me, he said, it's not that appearances matter in Hollywood. That's all there is. Nothing is real. Even movies just appear to move. They're photographs on a film reel, right? They're not even moving, or they're pixels being moved, and that they're not. None of it is real. The whole thing is an illusion, and the illusion is now breaking. It's the Matrix. The illusion is now.
Are you saying it's the Matrix?
Yeah, the illusion. You're seeing the Matrix. You're beginning to see the code now, and the code isn't that great. So, and by the way, we are now over 1,000 viewers, and so hit those like buttons. But
yes,
please do. So we're doing well.
And the chat jumped on me here, so this is the next one I got. So I don't know if there's any in between there, Andre.
Yeah, I shall check that out. Really.
While you're doing that, I'll read Dash Deese's super chat here. Sends us $10 Canadian. Thank you so much. Says, morning all. Hey Cameron, I watched a vid by Larry the Stormtrooper called "Why Blockbuster Was the Best." He says it perfectly why movies from that era was great. I know it sounds silly, but I recommend it.
It's not silly. Think about it. I mean, we have the archetype, a real archetype of Quentin Tarantino being essentially a video store clerk, who was inspired by the movies that were all around him and the people that was coming in talking to him. Those old movie rental places like Blockbuster created a culture. I'm a big fan of bookstores, and I wander bookstores. And so, when Borders closed, I was heartbroken. For me, bookstores create culture. You make friends there. I've met people in the fandom there when I was walking around Barnes & Nobles with my, Solo shirt critiquing Solo, right? And people say, hey, you, and they came up to me. Blockbuster was the same. And it reflected, again, a consumer-oriented time in Hollywood and community time about movies, which we've lost, and I hope we can start recreating.
Yeah, let's hope so. And then before we move on, the first super chat from today was actually from who says, hi, gents. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so glad to have you here. And one that was missing from the screen jumping on you was Hypergiver 2, who said maybe the Wachowskis are ripping off Ghost in the Shell standalone complex this time around.
Well, we're going to talk about that in depth. I think we're going to get into what's happening in the Matrix and whether the Wachowskis, his sisters, I guess now are, how they approach things creatively, and people have accused them of stealing the Matrix from someone else. So it's an interesting thing.
They made one good movie. I don't even know how they still. Anybody else after them would still not be in Hollywood. I gotta imagine
they're the club. They're the example of the club.
Yeah, and that one movie was like a cultural phenomenon, like that once a generational movie that everyone has seen.
So was The Sixth Sense. I mean, but Mike Shyamalan got knocked down for a long time because he couldn't live up to The Sixth Sense again.
Exactly my point, and I think Cameron's right. It's because they're part of this club is why they get such special fucking treatment, because they have spent more money and lost more money way beyond what the Matrix has ever made Warner Brothers at this point.
Yeah. So we've got a message from my very good friend Mike, Mexican Iron Man.
The only Mexican Iron Man, who says, I'm going to screw this up, but Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, you're getting better at it. You're getting better at it.
Hail, brother Andre and Tom and Cameron. Your content on Patreon rocks the last 2 weeks. As for Marvel, I can't wait for Shang-Chi 2, The Legend of the Rabbit Chicken.
Yeah. I know that Mike. I know our good friend Paulie liked the movie. I think Mike did not like the movie, so we have difference of opinion in the world.
He walked the fuck out.
but Mike,
the rabbit chicken, or headless snarf, as I like to call him, was just too much for him. So,
I don't know what the reference of. I didn't see the movie. I don't think I'm going to go see the movie. But
it was too much for him to bear.
But Mike, again, thank you for referencing my Patreon. He was one of my earliest subscribers, and we've been having a lot of fun in the last few weeks. It's been rising pretty rapidly, and we'll talk about that at some point.
Everyone do check out Kamran's Patreon. The link is in the description, so do check that out.
It's very nice to be there. But let's do stuff here. Yeah,
and then Golgo13's Anime 101 sent 99 cent 100 super sticker. So thanks so much for that.
And Golgo's a Patreon subscriber, so ask Golgo if they like it. I think they do. We've had some nice changes.
Did we miss a couple in between there, because it did jump on me, Andre?
Yeah, well, let me do a double check. I think we were pretty caught up to that point.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss any.
Yeah, no, not up to that point, but there are maybe some between. No, we are good. So the
Reservoir Frog,
next one.
As much as I love video and I come from video, he's not wrong here. Blockbuster was a corporate behemoth that swallowed up independent stores. They didn't have a good back catalog and were overpriced. You're not wrong, sir.
You're not wrong. I mean, but I was just talking about the culture of video stores that's lost.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will say this, like, being the fact that I owned one and I worked in it for so many years, the video store was my comic book shop. Yeah. Like, I didn't have a comic book shop growing up. We didn't have one. So to me, the closest thing to what a lot of you guys out there who had that was me just going to the video store and hanging out with my buddies and talking to the clerks and, shit like that, and renting a bunch of movies. But I love the mom and pop shops quite a bit more, especially working for them. I hated working for Movie Gallery. That was...
Yeah. I didn't know that you owned your own video store. That's really interesting.
I did for a short period, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's cool. And then before we get into the main topic, T Neil 89 says for $10. Thank you so much. Morning from Brentwood, guys. Not at the topic yet, but should wokefuckery infect and ruin the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake, I fear that it will do more damage than did The Last Jedi. I have to disagree with that a little bit. I don't think it's going to do more damage than The Last Jedi.
That damage is done.
Exactly. I think it's only going to continue to do the damage and prevent the recovery and possibly do damage to a completely different crowd. However, it's just going to be, I think, be another case of the remake being inferior to the original, which in gaming really shouldn't happen, but there we go. And checking out and reading some
and we'll see. We'll see. I mean, is this something, like I said, I remain of the opinion, perhaps a controversial opinion to some, but I remain of the opinion that Bob Chapek doesn't want this woke crap because it doesn't make the shareholders money. And so I don't know.
I don't know how much he has to do with that game.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That would be way in his purview.
Yeah. So, I mean, but, again, he came in a certain part of the process, and I don't know how much of it is in his mind, but certainly he doesn't want to hear that kind of feedback from customers anymore. And I'm sure he's gotten the word out to even the video games guys. Look, let's just focus on making Star Wars stuff. So I don't know where he was in the process when this thing was being developed and how much influence he could have had on it. But I would like to believe that moving forward, the video games will be just like the rest of Star Wars, will be on a better track, just because I'm sure he's given them the directive. We just want to make money, man. So shut up and get some work done.
Yeah. Then again, David Finn brings up an interesting question: is it a remake or a remaster? Because that's
let's get into the story right away before we move on, since we're on it. Tom, if you check the private chat, I put an article in there with why people are worried. Would you like to go through it?
Would I like to, or will I, is the question.
Okay, fine. Can you bring it up on screen, and then I'll go through it?
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, I'm not a gamer like you, Andre. If it's not on the Sega Mega Drive, I probably am not well aware of it if it's not GTA. But the Knights of the Old Republic is a very popular game among the kids. So we got the story here coming from Bounding. It says former The Mary Sue writer and social justice activist Sam Meggs working on Star Wars Knight of the Old Republic remake. If you wanted to read this, go right ahead. That's up to you.
Yeah, sure. So basically, this then comes from John F. Trent, who says, the former The Mary Sue writer, and that of course means an activist. Like the Mary Sue isn't journalism; it's activism.
Yeah, and he's obviously a beta male for even working there. I mean, just a dude working at that place, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, and this would then be activist Sam Meggs announced that she.
Oh, it's a woman. I thought it was a man, but I don't know what gender is now.
Names can sometimes be misleading.
I don't know what gender is nowadays. I'm an old guy. I don't know.
The pronouns weren't listed until this point, so I think you have to be forgiven.
Maybe it's good. That. Maybe we're not supposed to know. Maybe that's where we are.
Exactly. Anyway,
okay, people are misinterpreting my whole popular with the kids thing. I was making like a joke, like Letterman, you know, and he like the kids love it. It's popular. Like that's all it was, guys. Don't take it so literally. Sorry.
Yeah. And anyway, she announced that she is and has been working on the newly announced Star Wars The Knights of the Old Republic remake. And it is officially classified as a remake. But that doesn't mean that there is no room for reinterpretation here and there. I'm just saying, it's not in the article, I'm just saying that. Star Wars The Knights of the Old Republic remake was announced at the PlayStation Showcase 2021, where the game's lead producer Ryan Treadwell made it abundantly clear the game is a complete remake. He explained, "This is a complete remake of this beloved Star Wars story. For Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake, we are rebuilding from the ground up while maintaining that integrity and story from the original." You see, to me, that's red flags already, because is that all you're doing? Because that scene sounds more like, we're doing a completely different thing with this and that from the original. But anyway, moving on. Treadwell would add, the original Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is a true classic and one of our favorite Star Wars stories ever. We want to honor that original story and make it as impactful for players today. In terms of visuals, we have the opportunity to present this story with a much higher level of fidelity than was possible in the past, while making sure that we are being authentic to what players loved about that original game. An interview with StarWars.com, Treadwell also reiterated, our big goals on this are to bring the story to a modern audience. Oh,
okay, so that's screwed. That's done. That's
yeah.
That's everything you've read so far. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and have it be just as impactful today as it was for players when it originally launched. Yeah, another red flag. Lucasfilm's games executive producer Orion Kellogg also told StarWars.com, we've been working really, really closely with Aspyr for a long time now to deconstruct what made KOTOR so great and bring that back to audience. Yeah, red flag upon red flag.
Yeah, deconstruct. I mean, no, I think that game is screwed. I think that game is totally screwed, and I think that it will do poorly. And Mr. Chapek will be making a call to that department saying, "What are you guys doing?" So, yeah.
The problem is that this is already well on their way. It's probably too late to stop at this point.
Exactly like
this guy video games take years to make, and at this point,
Chapek only asserted his power middle of this year, right?
Exactly.
This thing was probably already, because I developed I have a video game. If anyone hasn't played it yet, go play 50 Cent Blood on the Sand. I wrote that game, right? And I wrote it, and it took a long time after I wrote it for it to actually be made, right? And so video games are a long process.
Yeah, it gets even worse though. Okay. Kellogg went on to hint that they will be changing character designs, dialogue, and more. We want this game to be just as beloved as it was before. It won't be. Some of my favorite meetings to have in my week right now are to get into the nitty-gritty with Aspyr and talk about why did we make that choice in the original game, and how does that play today?
So why was that character male? Why was that character male? Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. How do we expand that choice and make it even more meaningful and impactful? Yeah, exactly as you said. Like, why is that character male? That character can easily be a woman or a they. We think about literally every word of dialogue and other choices down to the clothes that the character is wearing.
So it means they're not going to look sexy. The women aren't going to look sexy and whatever. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. He then reiterated that they are deconstructing the game. We trust Aspyr.
Not a remaster.
Yeah, nope. This is a
I mean, deconstruction is part of the subversion pathology, which just this whole sort of communist ideology that's entered into Hollywood, right? Which is subverting everything that is good, for the grand historical plan that we're putting into place. I mean, that's and the fact that it repeats that word, that's a buzzword coming out of this sort of extreme woke narrative. When you're deconstructing things, means you're finding something wrong with it, tearing it apart, and putting it back together in a worse way.
Oh, it gets even better. So on that note, he says deconstruct again. We trust Aspyr. We trust the team that's working on it, and we're doing the work ourselves to dig in, deconstruct, and reconnect to why people love it, because we don't want to mess with that. Yeah, that's a lie if I ever heard one. We love it too.
Then you don't deconstruct anything. I mean, you just go with what's working. It doesn't make any sense what they're saying, so whatever.
Exactly. We love it too, and so we want to do it right. We hope everybody feels we've done this game a service when all is said and done, and I can guarantee you right away that will not be happening. For some advice on how to remake a game properly, as a hardcore fan of Sega Mega Drive, I will refer you to the Android versions of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Sonic CD. The definitive versions of those games aren't the ones on the original Sega Mega Drive. Go figure. No, actually, there the remake is superior, because the remake was made by a super fan. I forget his name right now, but he's the same guy that made like that recent Sonic game that was on consoles here a few years back. That was like the best game since the 2D games of the 90s. Same guy that did these remakes, and they are just that. They are literal remakes. Like, if you just play them, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, other than that the game is now in high definition and in widescreen, and the features that were only introduced in Sonic 2 have retroactively been put into Sonic 1 and Sonic CD, which is a huge plus, because play those games on the original, you'll really miss the spin dash feature. Now it's there in the remake. So, and beyond that, it's identical. It's just like widescreen and high definition. It's done a remake done right. This ain't no remake. I mean, they should call it Knights of the Old Republic Subverted, because that's what they're already promising that it's going to be.
Okay. Well, I mean, based on everything I'm hearing, this is going to be a disaster. And I do believe that Bob Chapek will put a call in saying, okay, I know I wasn't able to get involved with this train because it was already had left the station when it was halfway or most of the way to the destination. But now I'm here and we're not going to do this crap anymore. I'm absolutely sure he's going to say that. I'm sure he already knows about this. And he's like, all right, here we go. I don't have to deal with this crap. Right. Well, let it play out and then I'll knock some heads. Let's just because again, what he does is this. Chapek is very strategic. He lets the evidence prove itself, right? He gives people the rope to hang themselves. I think he knew when he was first at least given the title of CEO, even though it was taken, the powers taken away from him within days by Iger coming back in, that he knew what was happening on Star Wars. He knew what was happening because that was the problematic child at the time, right? And he knew what was happening with Miss Kennedy and how she was leading it. And so he just didn't get involved until he needed to, until she had stepped at a point where he could then use his Machiavellian genius to essentially quiet her, right? After Gina Carano. That was the step too far. And so I think he's going to let these people make their step too far in the video games, and people will be outraged and disappointed and say, here we go, Chapek has failed us. It's going right back to the old garbage. Well, Chapek wasn't involved in this. And he's going to then assert his power, and I think we'll be okay moving forward. It's a tragedy they're doing this to such a beloved game, but it was a tragedy what they did to Luke in The Last Jedi. It's the same regime. It's the leftover of that regime. It's the last remnant of that. It's, what this is? This Knights of the Republic is that Japanese dude who still thinks he's fighting World War II in 1963 in the jungle, right? That's what this is. It's one leftover dude running around with shooting at stuff, right? Not knowing that it's over.
Exactly. In this case, that the leftover dude or dudette would be Sam Maggs, who is now we have like a bunch of old tweets from her both in this article.
Oh, no. I got something better.
We have been sent them from Stephanie Janishek.
Well, let's go to those first.
Let's go to those. You got something better. Let's see what
we got those first. But I got something even better than that. But let's go with those first. Let me bring those up here. Let's see. Mike just shared them with me here. All right, let me see if I can bring up the right screen. All right, so here we have some bangers from Sam. If you want to hate Rey, at least be honest about it. You hate that she's a Mary Sue because she's a woman. It's cool. Just be real about it. No, we hate plenty of Gary Stews as well.
And she wrote for the Mary Sue, so whatever.
Right, yeah. The Last Jedi, men screw literally everything up every time.
Jeez. Oh my god.
The Last Jedi. Please listen to the powerful queer woman for once in your ding dang life.
Who that would be Admiral Gender Studies? Is that what she's
of course. Who else could it be? AKA the worst military commander ever put on screen.
But she had a nice cocktail party dress. I got to give her that.
Snotty, angry baby boy. Rey hardly needed any training at all. Me, strong in the Force.
Oh, no.
Do you not remember that Anakin was auto-born strongest Jedi because of an arbitrary and intensely stupid high microorganism count?
And he needed to be trained, and was he not trained, he would just be a kid who had a little bit of a psychic sense of what was coming. That would have been the extent of his powers for the rest of his life had he not been trained.
And I think she's overlooking one huge point. He was immaculately conceived. Like he was an anomaly. I mean, and it's not, unless you're implying that Rey was the same way, then no, she's a Palpatine.
She's Palpatine's whatever clone, granddaughter, daughter. Yeah. But again, even that dude, immaculate conception dude, needed to be trained in his powers. And had the Jedi first said, we're not going to train him because it would be dangerous to let him tap into that ability. Meaning that if they just left him alone, he wouldn't be dangerous because he wouldn't know how to use it.
Exactly. And And he didn't have discipline, as many are pointing out in the chat here, and he lost limbs because of it, on several different occasions.
Yeah.
So it only goes to show that.
Do we know what year this crap is from? I mean, this is right after. Is it on the? It says the December.
It's from December of
2017,
2017, and then in 2014,
so at the height of this,
smashing the patriarchy and everything. So yeah.
And then there's just a couple more here, but our good buddy Yellow Flash sent me some video of this young lady.
Okay, here we go.
Boy, is she crazy.
So we're screwed. Okay, whatever.
They can take your character, lock them in place, have made their character pantsless, and then can simulate sexual assault with your character, and you are helpless to stop it.
The graphics are so good, this attack is eerily realistic, but this is virtual rape, hackers rewriting codes, and hijack Grand Theft Auto. The vile scenes are then posted to YouTube.
That's deplorable and should not be allowed anywhere. Like, they should be banned off the servers immediately.
Violence. In Grand Theft Auto, for instance, players carry knives and guns and they get away with looting and murder. But the sexual brutality now popping up online has the attention of Toronto police.
Out of people have experienced it.
In this scene, a dog has been modified to do disturbing things, and Detective Sean Marshall, who investigates...
Sorry, I think you get the idea.
Oh my God! This is now all you people trapped in Canada. Now you know how you got trapped in Canada because of dudes like Detective Marshall there.
We had a comment from Script Doctor here. Where to go?
Oh
holy crap! She's downtown Toronto.
He knows exactly where that is. I like Toronto before it became East Berlin, right? And I filmed Nikita there, good Indian food there. Now it's like, show your papers. And it's because of this, whatever. The dog thing was kind of funny, I gotta say.
It was. I'm just double checking out.
I mean, that's what people, you give them that technology, that's what they're gonna do.
She's clearly upset by it, so.
Yeah,
they should not be allowed. They should not be allowed to make use video game technology to make non-real circumstances. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Evidently not. Only of a certain scenario.
What's funny is Jesse did this, but it looks like it's Script Doctor face palming.
Yeah.
It's got the blue shirt.
Yeah, the blue shirt. They can't see his mouth. Yeah,
that's cute. Humping air. Yeah. Barely.
Okay. Knights of the Old Republic is screwed, but it will allow him, Chapek, to then clean up the video game section moving forward. As you guys I know it feels like that we've been patient for a decade. You're right. This is a remnant of a regime.
Wait, Kamran. One little moment. Prediction time. Tell us in detail, as if we're clipping it in here right now, because I'm going to in some video here. What will this game allow Chapek to do? Because this is going to come out, and chances are it's going to be praised by the game journalists. Might not play so well with the actual fans. What do you think is going to happen?
Based on everything that we're seeing, it looks like this new Knights of the Old Republic remake is going to be a disaster. It's not going to be what the fans want. I mean, based on everything we're hearing, that the person behind it, the storyteller behind it, has all these political agendas from the old Lucasfilm regime. It feels like we're looking at this kind of storytelling that was coming out at the time of The Last Jedi, right? Some really outdated, a decade old, feels like ideological crap. So I think people will be very unhappy. The audience, the game players will be very unhappy, especially because in the same way that The Last Jedi ruined a wonderful world that had been created before, people are very passionate about Knights of the Old Republic. I mean, it has some of the most incredible graphics I've ever seen and great story. And so it's they're going to be very upset about this, rightfully so. And of course, the game journalists will go back. It'll feel like we've gone back in time 5 years, where it'll be all like, look at these, these sexist, racist, homophobic, players, and we'll hear all that garbage again. So it'll feel like we're back at like the height of The Last Jedi madness, right? However, we are in a different world. So this game was developed by people still living in that world, and that world has changed by the time the game has been released. And so Bob Chapek is very much a consumer-oriented CEO, and he came in too late in the process to stop this machine. And we've talked about on Midnight's Edge that he's faced with all these old contracts. He could cancel all these projects. He just has to end up paying these people out, and there's no revenue stream that comes. And so he's not going to block these things. He's going to, for two reasons. One, he's going to let them go out. Maybe, it'll be a loss, but maybe some revenue will come in. Some idiot's going to buy this game, and it'll be better than just canceling the project and just paying everybody and not getting anything out of it, right? That's one. And two is this was going to give him the leverage that he needs. Bob Chapek is very much that the guy who sits there and waits for you to fall into your own trap. It's what he did with Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm. He allowed her to overplay her hand with Gina Carano so that he can then move against her. And whether she still has a year contract, a title, or whatever, even those who are saying that accept that she's essentially been neutered when it comes to Star Wars, which isn't what you would expect. After this triumphant Gina Carano firing that was done and seen as this great resurgence of the Kathleen Kennedy Flying Monkey group, instead it just ended up being their last hurrah. So I think the Knights of the Old Republic will end up being the last hurrah of these cast of characters in the video game divisions inside of Lucasfilm, and it will allow Chapek, and it will accelerate his process of cleaning that out. And as games take a few years. We have to have this thing come out now. And then he'll be able to say, look, again, he's very much about, it's not about my ego, man. I'm sorry. This isn't personal. Just look at the numbers. He's a numbers guy. He said, I'm sorry I have to let you go. Just look at the numbers. The audience didn't respond to it. I'm getting these shareholders, these multi-billion-dollar Vanguard, these funds coming after me. We're gonna have to get this place profitable. So you did a great job creatively, but I have to let you move on, and we'll write you a nice letter of recommendation. And then he'll bring in new people. And he lets the numbers speak for themselves in order to assert himself, and which also will be how he's played Shang-Chi and other things. He just allows the numbers to play to assert his agenda and to undercut the people who are not thinking in terms of profitability and revenue. And so he lets them fall into their own traps, and Knights of the Old Republic will be part of that.
All right, excellent. Yeah, that's kind of like what I'm thinking too. I'm also seeing some of the comments here that I want to highlight right away.
Yep.
Roof Korean the Based says for $5, remember folks, BioWare recently remastered Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, and 3, I'll say that, desexualizing all female characters and wokeifying the narrative. Same company for Knights of the Old Republic.
And their contract ain't going to be renewed. I think they'll be let go, or they'll be asked to shake up how they're doing things moving forward if they want continuation of their work.
Yeah, and this says for $5. If you guys know anything about Asper and BioWare like I do you have already known that Knights of the Old Republic was screwed from the start. Yeah, I didn't know that before, but after seeing their comments, I obviously know so right now, and I can totally tell, just as a Sega fan. Yeah. Project Cambrian says, not in a super chat, I just thought it was like a worthwhile comment, which are many, but I happened to see this one. When they screw up Knights of the Old Republic, that'll be a separate Star Wars fan generation that'll get on board with the rest of us. The more they fail, the stronger our voices get.
I fully agree with that. And I think Chapek is waiting for that. He's waiting for that. He's facing the club, so he needs an army of. He already has the investors behind him, right? But now he needs the army of the general public and the outcry of the general public. It was the outcry of the general public about Gina Carano's firing that allowed him to maneuver Miss Kennedy into a position of essentially, just sit in the corner and take your money and be quiet. And he's maneuvered her there. He needs all of the fan bases to support him in his efforts to go against the club, because he doesn't have the mechanisms of the club. He's fighting this entrenched oligarchy that is not interested in the customer base. And so he needs a customer base. We're his warriors. So it's good if you're outraged about this.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. And with that, we have some other stories here, but
we're doing. We have 1,400 viewers. We're doing great here.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone, smash that like as you're
our better audience. Yeah.
Yeah, as you're about to get some unparalleled analysis of corporate politics and what's going on behind the scenes.
I had some fun. And I had a prophecy come true, which I always like.
Yes, you did. And we're going to get into that right now. But everyone, smash the like for prophecies coming true. And please help share this stream. That would be most helpful. And with that, we have more stories. But since we are on Disney and Star Wars and Chapek, let's continue along that line. Because last week, when you were here, I don't have the clip here, we'll sort that out for later, but one of your predictions last week was that there's going to be ever more and more shrill attacks on Bob Chapek in the media. And we've seen several instances of that this last week. We had Small Screen that reported that Disney are looking at someone to help out Bob Chapek in dealing with talent and stuff like that. And then we also had some other stories featuring notable creators, such as the Russo brothers, such as the actor Benedict Cumberbatch, the actor playing Doctor Strange, and also Chapek didn't get quite the win that he probably would have hoped for.
But he got a win, and we're going to talk about it. Shang-Chi was a win for him.
Let's break this down, because Shang-Chi surprised everyone by coming up much better than expectations in terms of the box office. And a box office, at the surface, a strong box office, that's something that would benefit Feige, it would benefit Iger, and it would harm Chapek. Whereas if it completely flopped, the opposite would be.
So let's clarify for our audience. Some of them may not know what the dynamics of that, because that sounds like it's crazy. Why would the seeming success of a movie hurt the CEO of Disney, right? And so the very simple context is this. This is part of a bigger civil war, the center between Marvel, Kevin Feige, and Bob Chapek. And Kevin Feige seems to want Bob Chapek out. He wants him removed, or at least he wants him neutered in the same way that Miss Kennedy was neutered, right? And so that's the context of this. And the central battle point, the Pearl Harbor of this war, is the moment where Scarlett Johansson, to everyone's surprise in the industry, sued Disney, claiming that she didn't get the money she would have gotten from Black Widow because of their release strategy, because they simultaneously put it out on Disney Plus streaming. And that lawsuit, I have said on this channel, and I believe it, did not come from Ms. Johansson herself. This was instigated by Mr. Feige. He's using her as his knight or his queen on the chessboard to try to go straight at the king, right? And so it was such a shockwave through the industry because it didn't make rational sense. This kind of salary dispute between the top actress in Hollywood and one of the biggest studio heads could have been resolved with one phone call from her agent, who's the head of CA, the most powerful agency, to Bob Chapek, said, hey, look, she's not happy with the numbers. Give her some more money to cover that. And it would have been done quietly. But instead, a lawsuit, to Chapek's surprise, was landed on his desk. And that was done as a very aggressive action. My understanding is Marvel is not included in that lawsuit. So again, it seemed, why would she sue the person telling her to do it, right? And so it was very much clear to me at that time that this is Mr. Feige saying, look, hey, baby, look, he's screwing you. You got to get this done. You got to get this done for you and for all the women that you were being screwed, by toxic men like that. And he instigated this thing as a part, primarily to humiliate and embarrass Bob Chapek, and also to give him leverage to say that, look, Chapek is mismanaging Marvel, and he needs to get his fingers out of this pie and let me do what I do best, and including setting up release schedules and all this stuff. You should be listening to me. So Shang-Chi was supposed to be the pivotal moment where the strategy would be, Bob Chapek's strategy would be brought into question. So what happens with Shang-Chi is Bob Chapek says, okay, you're suing me, you're Scarlett, you're unhappy with what happened with Black Widow, that I put it out on streaming, and you say people would have gone to the theater and it would have made more money. I mean, it ended up making well over $300 million worldwide in the middle of a very crazy time. And it made quite a bit of money on streaming. But you're saying it's not enough. Let's prove it. Let's take Shang-Chi and this new wave of the next phase of Marvel the launch of that phase officially and cinematically, and we're going to just do what you said should have been done. We're going to put it out theatrically. Now, and Bob's hope was that the movie, putting it out on Labor Day, putting it out only theatrically, and not giving it a simultaneous release on Disney Plus streaming, his hope was that it would be a complete disaster. Most movies Labor Day don't make a lot of money. I think the last big movie was one of the it was a Rob Zombie horror movie that made like
Halloween.
30 million. Thank you. His version of Halloween, 30 million bucks, like a decade ago. And so it was very much done as we're going to dump this and we're going to do this because if the movie fails to bring in money or, with a pure theatrical release, it will undercut Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit and it will undercut Feige's efforts to overthrow him. So the box office returns, it did much better than expected. It ended up making, 90 million or so for the weekend, actually probably 70 million for the 3-day weekend, and then you add the fourth, you get a little bit more than that. And so, it's been touted throughout Hollywood, in the trades especially, the trades which are largely on Mr. Feige's side, because the trades are the voice of the club, and Mr. Feige is this new shining member of the club, and they're golden boy, at least the one, whether they accept him or not, they're certainly using him for that purpose. And so the trades are always the voice of the club. And so they came out and say, what a genius Kevin Feige is. Look what he did. He took this dead weekend and he made it work. And then, as I predicted on Midnight's Edge Toxic Femininity on Monday night, I said, this is going to...
I was curious if that was me or if that was Cameron. We lost Cameron. So
hopefully he'll be back any moment here.
Looks like Disney came and got him. Well, yeah, hopefully he'll be back here any moment. Yeah, F's in the chat for Cameron.
Yeah, that is,
I'm sure it's just an internet hiccup. He'll be back, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be with us in the
While we got a minute, though, let's grab a super chat or two. Why not?
Yes, let's do that. So Tom, can you bring anyone up on screen here?
Let's see here. Nope, I do not have any fresh ones I can bring up on screen, so you're just gonna have to go back to the classics where we left off, if you can.
Yeah, all right. Let us go back to where we left off in the meantime. Also, we have some relatively recent news that Eternals will now also be a theatrical exclusive, thanks to Shang-Chi.
Wow.
So it's going to be interesting to hear what Kamran has to say about that when he's back again.
There was some story in Variety I was trying to bring up, but I have to be logged in. But they're touting Shang-Chi as a success. So
I'm gonna put it into private chat because it's spreading to elsewhere as well. So we can get back into that when Kamran leaves as well. And Lonnie Holcomb says, "Bummer. He was in the middle of a great explanation."
He was.
That is a bummer.
He was. Somebody came
indeed.
and took out his internet, I think.
Yeah, we've seen this thing before, haven't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, we have some older super chats that we can go through here. And
yes, Justy, that is correct. The Matrix will be day and date on HBO Max.
Yeah.
So.
Mike Artis said for $5. All these spot-on predictions made me remember where I've seen Kamran before. He is the Watcher from What If. Yeah, that's a nice one right there. And Chris Catman sent us $20. Thank you so much, Chris. We really will put that to good use. And he says, "Hail all. I agree and look forward to Venom. Kamran just got the copy of Shadow of the Swords. Well, I'll save this one for when he comes back. But so we've gone through it. Just got the copy of Shadow of the Swords last week, and I'm almost done with the story. Kamran, where can I get a copy of your book about Sultana Hurrem?" Well, I can answer that. Well, when he comes back, he can answer this. But in the meantime, check out this website. The link to that is in the description. You'll find more things there. Organic Vistas says for $4.99, read Kamran's books. Many thanks to him for the actual books in my hands. Loved them. Thank you all for your stand and fight. My name is Mike. Oh, another Mike. Well, Organic Vistas, a.k.a. Mike, thank you for your support. I will be sure to share all this with Kamran when he comes back again. So I'll send him a copy even if we go through it now. So don't you worry about that. He'll get your message. Accidental Tourist said, Tom, I was a poor college student in every sense of the word. The video store was my night out. Yellow Flash says, I sent you a clip of the writer from a news story. Yeah, we played that. So yeah, that was quite something. And Pablo Papano says for $5, Wachowskis peaked with the first Matrix. Was that lawsuit real or intent lore? A black female writer claimed they ripped her off Matrix. I'm not familiar with that.
Yes,
but luckily we have Kamran back again.
Familiar with it though.
Yeah.
So
I just have to say before we continue, we did some super chats of members of our audience, such as Organic Vistas, aka Mike, who loves your books.
Oh.
And thanks us for your fight. Mike Artis, he points out that he's seen you before as the Watcher in What If. And Chris Catman wondered, where can he get a copy of your book about Sultana Hurrem?
So the Sultana Hurrem is the project I'm working right now on a television series right now. It's actually a TV pilot that we're out there selling right now. We're actually taking meetings with the big Netflix and all the big guys right now with that. And so please send us positive thoughts and prayers that we sell it to series, right? We have a written pilot, we have a director, everything's good to go. It is not yet a book. My intention is, God willing, we sell it to series to have a book as part of that because I'm already a published author, and so it just makes sense to promote that as an ancillary thing. So thank you for reading, both of you. Thank you both gentlemen for reading my books, and anyone else wants to buy them, they're pretty good books. And on my third novel is actually being pre-released on Patreon. So anyone joins my Patreon is a VIP member. I'm putting out another chapter later today, and we'll talk about that later today, but that's happening there too. But yeah, so that's what's going on there. And I apologize to everyone. I lost all internet. My phone went down, my computer went down. I apologize to everyone in the middle of my passionate statement, which I can continue. It just all vanished.
Do continue the passionate statement. Before though, I just want to highlight something which I think is going to form part of your analysis once we've set it up. We have now learned that Marvel will also put the Eternals exclusively in theaters, motivated by the success of Shang-Chi.
The success. All right.
Well, that's the most recent story.
Yeah. So good. See, Chapek is using this to his advantage, right? And that's exactly what I think he was going to do anyway. But now he presents it as, I'm just trying to make us more money, right? What do you can't. And so,
but let's get back to where we were. If you can, recall,
and if you can,
where we were, and we'll continue with your breakdown, and we'll get into the Eternals when we get there.
Yeah. So, what I was saying was that in Bob Chapek's best case scenario, Shang-Chi would have been a completely disastrous release over this weekend. It would have made less than that Rob Zombie Halloween movie, brought in $25 million, and he can say, look. Had it not been for the streaming of Disney Plus, Scarlet, look at the disaster that would have happened to your movie, right? People are just not ready to go back to theaters right now in the current environment. And so I did the best I could for us all to make money here. And however, the movie did, Shang-Chi did better than expected. And the final tally is somewhere between, it was about 77 or 78 million for the 3-day weekend, which is comparable to which is less than, but still comparable to the 90 million or so that the Scarlet movie made, Black Widow made, and for those 3 days. So the trades immediately started coming out and saying how brilliant Kevin Feige is. He took this unknown property with a really not well-known actor and with an all-Asian cast, blah, blah, and made it a massive success, the greatest Labor Day thing. And so the trades, which are very pro-club, and Kevin Feige is a prominent member of the club, have pushed in that direction. And I said on Midnight's Edge, Toxic Femininity on Monday night, I said that this will so the Civil War is now going to get interesting because it didn't go exactly the way Bob Chapek had hoped. And I think part of that is that people just want to get back into theaters. And I'm a big theater lover myself. I love theaters, and people are just tired after a year and a half of this garbage. They just want to go see a movie, and a Marvel movie's coming out, and they just want to be back and enjoy themselves. And so that's it, and that's a good thing, I think, ultimately. So now what's going to happen is the Kevin Feige supporters in the trades, the club is going to think, oh, we have a victory. We have our moment against Chapek. You know, he's weak. We have his Achilles heel. His strategy worked to our benefit. And now we're going to attack him and say, look, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And he needs to be removed because, he proved Scarlet right. Look how much money it could make without the simultaneous release. However, did he really prove Scarlet right? As I wrote a very lengthy article on my Patreon about this because immediately what I predicted on toxic femininity happened within 24 hours. I said they're going to start putting out press that Chapek needs to go. And within 24 hours, Andre sent me the video of that channel. It's a small channel, but they've been able to, at least they seem to be connected to some industry sources to reveal what the club is thinking, right? And so,
this would be smallscreen.co.uk. We've had the editor of that outlet on here before, actually.
Okay.
And they are well connected. They were also the ones that confirmed or said, according to their sources, shareholders were with Chapek.
Which is the bottom line. So they put out this video, and I think the title was a little bit of a clickbait. The title's like, we're hearing that Bob Chapek is going to be outed, which that's not really what the video is about. It's more about that they're going to bring in some, person who's going to, handle the actors, like, be nicer to the horses kind of thing, right? So, bring a handler in. That may just be PR stuff. I'm sure they're bringing somebody like that in because they need to calm down the actors that Mr. Feige is riling up right now, right? I think they definitely doing that. But the idea that was promoted in the headline of that is that he's about to be fired, which is exactly the kind of headline that the club wants to get out there, right? Because most people aren't going to watch the video, but they'll see that headline like, well, it looks like Bob Chapek's about to be fired. And the momentum for Bob Chapek to be fired would build, which is what Kevin Feige and the club want, because he's messing with their power and he's messing with their status. And so that I predicted was going to happen on Monday, and by Tuesday we had this article out, and so it's already happening. But as I did in my Patreon article, as I examined it very closely, I don't think there's any real economic basis for that claim, because yes, Shang-Chi did better than expected. However, it did not do as well as Black Widow. In the comparable first 3 days, it was $20 million off of where Black Widow was. And you can't even say it's because people are going to see it on streaming. Less people went to see that movie. And then if you just look at the pure economics of it, is that, as I talked about in the article, as we know, Disney keeps between 55 to 60% of the theatrical grosses, depending on the leverage it has in a particular situation. So let's say they keep 60%, but they keep nearly 100% of the streaming. If you subscribe to Disney Plus, they're getting your money. If you're subscribed through a third party thing, a TV channel that's set up for that kind of thing. Roku, I have Roku, so I subscribe through my streaming through Roku. So Roku keeps a portion of that. So let's say that even in that situation, Disney keeps 85%. If you add the 55 million that Disney made purely from streaming that weekend of Black Widow, it is so far above what Shang-Chi brought in. And overall, for Shang-Chi to be the success that the club wants it to be, it has to beat the Black Widow take-home money that Disney put in its pocket. And in order to do that, and I analyze it based on the numbers, it's going to have to, Shang-Chi's going to have to gross globally about $550 million or more. And I don't think anyone is seriously predicting that. They weren't predicting that before. Even with a solid weekend that was below Black Widow. Black Widow made, I believe, $370 million globally. And so even in its first weekend, it didn't match up to Black Widow. So it's unlikely. I know some people liked it. I don't know that it has the legs to actually do more than $370 million to beat Black Widow gross. I don't think it has any of the legs to get to $550 million in the current environment. So ultimately, Bob Chapek wins because he'll say, look, Scarlett, we ended up bringing in more money from Black Widow by doing the simultaneous release, and I got to answer the shareholders. They wanted more money, and we did Shang-Chi, and it just simply didn't bring in enough money in comparison. So you should be happy that we put this out there because we got another $125 million coming in to Disney that wouldn't have come in. And Shang-Chi proves it. And you want a piece of that? I'm happy to give you a piece of that. Let's settle this lawsuit and finish it. And I think that's what he's going to do. And now, as Andrew told me, that now they're announcing that with the Eternals that's coming out, they are going to be doing the same strategy. That's a knockout punch number 2 that Chapek is going for. He's gonna, and it may do well. It may do better than Doomsayers. But again, I don't think it's going to do as well as Black Widow. So yet again, we're like, look, we got 2 movies in a row that simply didn't bring back the same kind of returns to Disney. So Scarlett, you don't have a case. So I really think, despite all the crowing that's going on in the trades right now, how brilliant Kevin Feige is, and maybe it's time for Bob Chapek to step back or maybe even just leave the company. Despite all of that, the lawyers are going, this is great. This is exactly what we need. And so the lawyers for Disney are going that. And so I think that after Eternals, I would, in fact, I'm sure the discussions are happening right now, but it may very well be, here's my prediction. It may very well be that after Eternals doesn't bring in the same kind of revenue that Black Widow did, when you add streaming into it. When that happens, I think shortly thereafter, you're going to hear the announcement that Scarlett has settled with Disney and the lawsuit is over. I don't think it goes further than the end of this year. I think already her claim has been weakened. And so Bob Chapek has won despite the way the trades are attempting to present it.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, as you also pointed out on the main channel last week, is that we are going to be seeing more and more shrill stories of Chapek being humiliated and a failure and soon to be replaced. And the more and more shrill they get, the more they are a sign of the opposite being reality. As they get more and more desperate to try to change the opinion of the shareholders.
It's a PR move, and it's a desperate PR move. It's a panic PR move. When you jump to having YouTuber channels come out with the headlines like, is Bob Chapek about to be fired? That's a pretty big jump from one movie's weekend release. The only time I've seen that happen, and I was there at Disney at the time, was when you had that Mars movie, the John Carter movie, right? And that was such a massive financial disaster for Disney that essentially the CEO was let go that weekend. I was there when that happened.
I was going to say which one. There was 2 Mars movies that fucked him over. There's Mars Needs Moms, and there's
yeah, exactly. So
one can have actually fucked the other by way of the title alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, John Carter, nobody knows who that is, and those books are actually very good books. I mean,
they just
when I was there
on that one mainly.
Well, that's exactly when I was there, and I was sitting around on Tron. I was like, hey guys, what kind of crap marketing is this? If I were doing the marketing for this movie, I would say, first of all, I've changed the title of John Carter of Mars. So you at least know it's a science fiction movie because I don't know what John Carter is, right? He doesn't have the name recognition of Tarzan, which is the other franchise that Edgar Rice Burroughs created. It's an Edgar Rice Burroughs script. So what you would say is John Carter of Mars, from the man, from the visionary author of Tarzan, comes the epic story that inspired Star Wars, right? And the great, and that's how you market it, because otherwise you don't have any context for this 100-year-old property that inspired many science fiction writers and filmmakers, but the average person doesn't know it anymore like the way they know Tarzan. But that was a disastrous thing, and he was out that weekend. I was like, oh, boss, the big boss, the CEO is out. But that's the one time I've seen that happen, because it was a massive, massive screw up on a scale people hadn't seen in a while, right? And it was a massive loss. That's not this. How are you going to fire a guy for having a successful movie over a weekend? You're not going to do that. But the fact that that's where the rhetoric went to was the panic of Kevin Feige's team.
Exactly. I think that pretty much has covered that. But we also have these stories about the Russo brothers and Benedict Cumberbatch. Tom, can you bring those up?
And also, I do want to
David in there.
But I don't know if you want to do it after that or before, but I do want to reference the Deadline article that just came out this morning about Shang-Chi and the actor. Do you want to do that after this?
Afterwards.
So, because that's my prophecy coming true. I like it.
And I don't have the link for the one you're talking about.
All right, I'm going to put it in
the private chat. Or Kamran, do you recall?
Yeah, I'll put it in the private chat. You'll find it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
I got
Because what's interesting about those, I think, isn't so much what is said, but what is not said. And would love to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, it reveals as well the weakness of Mr. Feige's position. And that's why we're seeing the shrill and desperation. The club can't handle that it's cracking. It can't handle that its power structure is cracking. But the smart people know where this is going. And not a lot of people in Hollywood are smart, but some of them are, and they see where this thing's heading.
Yeah.
There you got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, we're at 1,500 viewers. We're almost 1,600. That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Vanishing.
Everyone smash that like. Smash that like button.
And as you see at the top there, Jim Giannopoulos is leaving Paramount.
Yeah.
That's the other big news this morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that. This is the Shang-Chi story. So yeah, that's not quite the one that I had in mind. But
that's the one I just got sent.
Yeah, okay. Give me one second here, because we'll get into that afterwards, because that's a whole chapter all.
Well, the one I put in the private chat is the one I'm referring to. If you go look at that, Tom, you'll see the reference to the Deadline article I'm talking about.
That's the one I just brought up.
Well, okay, let's first then.
I don't know what you're bringing up, because the link I said was Shang-Chi, China release unlikely in the wake of an article. Yeah,
that's what I just brought up.
Okay, all right. I thought you were talking about the Paramount change.
No, I just said that was at the top part there, but I scrolled down and there it is. Yeah.
We are now perfect. We're on the same page. Okay.
Yes, let's do that.
This is what I had up, is it not?
Yeah. And then this will allow us to go into what's happening with the Russo brothers broadly in the world. But so this article here is about how Shang-Chi, there's Deadline, which is one of the major trades and one of the major spokes vehicles for the club, the Hollywood club, has put this thing out saying that the Shang-Chi is not likely going to be released in China, and they're blaming comments made by the star Simu Liu, that he made some comments apparently a few years ago, that his family had said that the Chinese Communist Party is terrible and it's China's a terrible place to be. And I've worked in China and I love the Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party is terrible, right? And they really made China a terrible place in some ways, right? And so for Chinese expatriates, that's not an uncommon perspective to have. And the article talks about that, that the Oscar-winning director of The Eternals also made comments about China. And that the point of it is that those comments are why it's not being released. Well, I think they weren't going to release it before those comments came out. I think we already saw last week the president of the country, she put out this strange directive in the media the day that Shang-Chi premiered, saying we're not going to be supporting sissy men. So what kind of the president of the country is going to talk about that? But that's the same day Shang-Chi came out. So the Chinese audience, they believe, wasn't going to respond to this actor before his political views were known. And they didn't like the portrayal, which they saw it as emasculating Chinese men. And they want Chinese men to be strong because, you got to get that army going well. So the pivotal thing in this article, though, the tone is fascinating, because this is what I talked about on Midnight's Edge a week ago, essentially. I had said that Hollywood has figured out that China is no longer a source of economic prosperity for them, that it's essentially taking and not giving, and that they're not getting what they need out of it. And that Bob Chapek had been wisely ahead of the curve on that and was already cutting ties. He chose not to release Black Widow in China, which was part of the complaint in Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit, because he saw what was coming, that this is not going to, it's China. We need to get off this. We need to wean off this now and cut these people off. And the future is actually going to be adversarial between the United States and China, I think, and Hollywood and China. And I said that you'll start noticing that Hollywood's rhetoric towards China, which had for the last decade been kiss daddy's butt, right, will suddenly turn to a very hostile rhetoric. And we're seeing the first indication of that in this Deadline article 1 week after I predicted it, which is the Deadline article talks about the Chinese, essentially the censorship group, or the Chinese film, group within the government that determines which movies come in. And we've all known that that's a censorship group. We've known that, but Hollywood has been kissing that group's butt for a decade and wanting to make it look wonderful. And we saw how they did, like, oh, you want a film using, Uyghur refugees as extras? Sure. You want a film in a prison camp, a concentration camp? We'll let you do it, right? And now it went from that to this article, which actually calls that Chinese government unit that selects which movies comes in, it calls it the propaganda arm of the Chinese government. I have not heard that phrase in a decade. I've never heard them refer to that group. And you only do that when you're ready to burn the bridges, right? So the trades, which essentially are mouthpieces for the system, are now reflecting the system sees China as the adversary, which Bob Chapek was ahead of the curve on, right? And so that change is the first major change in the trades, now saying that the Chinese government might be authoritarian. It might be a force of censorship. It might be, a force of propaganda, which with Hollywood's all of its wokeness, we can't be supporting that. So suddenly the next step, which is the prophecy I gave you guys a week ago, is now set up, which is you're going to start seeing, soon it will be announced, a anti-Chinese government movie, such as a 7 Years in Tibet or a Uyghur refugee movie. It's coming because the cord was cut today in this Deadline article by calling this a government agency a propaganda arm. That has never been said before in Hollywood, certainly not in the last decade. It might have been said during the 7 Years in Tibet days, right? But those days are 15 years old. So this is a remarkable change in language, which reflects the shift inside the system that Bob Chapek was ahead of the curve on, and yet again undercuts Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit because he's like, you wanted me to release your great movie through this propaganda arm? I saved your dignity, Scarlett. Cuts her lawsuit.
Yeah, that's a very good point right there, and also I just find it interesting that China would, or that Hollywood would label this department of the Chinese Authority as a propaganda wing. That's like a pot calling kettle black thing, if you ask me. But but that's a different matter. It did
just get announced that No Time to Die did get passed for to be shown in China. I don't know if that's relevant or not, but lucky for MGM, I guess.
Yeah,
good for them. So then
or actually
maybe
the Universal, because Universal handles the international distribution, so never mind.
Well, and I remain hopeful that movie is not terrible, because I've always said that if you go with woke James Bond, it's the end of wokeness. It's just a step too far, right? And if the Last Jedi was the shot to the heart of the fandom, I think if you actually make James Bond a weak, emasculated, woke loser, that's a shot to the head. That's a gunshot wound from which you don't come back from, right? So I'm hoping they fix that in their extensive reshoots from their initial audience reactions last year.
And I'm gonna grab this.
Tom, you can also point out how we actually even predicted that the movie was going to get reshoots anyway because it tested so poorly.
Well, it wasn't predicted. I actually had a source on the matter. Who told me that was going to happen, and they were going to use the guise of something else because part of it had to do, with global events, and the other part of it had to do with a very bad internal test screening. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks after that, or a month or two after that, or whatever it was, we got to reshoot this scene and that scene because the cell phones are out of date. Which I'm like, that is the lamest fucking excuse I've ever heard in my life. That's something you can do with computers. You would not. First of all, even if in a normal world where a pandemic wasn't going on, you would not spend the money it would take to get all those people back together to shoot something over some stupid cell phones. And in the middle of something like this, there's no reason to chance that kind of a thing. So that was their cover story.
And the advertising changed, Tom. The advertising changed. The original advertising that we saw, the clips or whatever would all be like, this African woman,
right,
or the African British woman that's taking the black woman that's taking the 007 moniker.
They even had it in the trailer where she's like, "Know your role and stay in your lane.
You're old man. Your time's up.
You're a dinosaur.
You're an old man and your time's up." And then the advertising became, I know why you took a shot at him. Yeah, because he's a dangerous guy, right? And then it suddenly became all about Bond again. And that's, I think, the shift. And I hope that's the majority of the movie. There'll be some woke blah, blah, blah thrown in there. But I think Barbara Broccoli hopefully figured out that's not her audience. And she's going to ruin her family's legacy if she actually let it go through. Who knows?
I don't know if they were able to fix it. But Tony Movie Chappie, D9, Neil Blomkamp, #1 fan, really wants to ask us this question. So I'm going to bring it up here. Ask Cameron, what did he think of Simu saying LOL to the fandom menace that thought Shang-Chi was going to bomb at the box office?
Well, I think Mr. Liu is becoming very quickly the same gentleman that he's sort of the Asian version of the guy, playing Cyborg, who's just out there, making stupid comments on Twitter and damaging his career and and so this gentleman, I think, has already proven through his comments that he has invested a pretty ugly part of his ego into this film, and he's not thinking out his relationship with the fans, and he's not thinking out at all his relationship with the power structure of Hollywood, the real power structure, not the club. He very much wants to be Kevin Feige's guy, and so he thinks that's where the power is. That's a young, inexperienced actor who doesn't understand the things that I'm talking about, who thinks the popular crowd is actually in charge of the high school, and the principal has just come back in, and he's about to learn when I think he's going to be sent to detention. I think Mr. Liu is making a lot of mistakes publicly because he's just swept away in becoming famous for a bit, and because he's not aware of the real power dynamics of what's happening here and the role he's playing in them, which the Russo brothers are aware of because they're not immature young actors. And so we can get to that.
Yes, exactly. And I believe I have that story here somewhere. At least I had it here. Oh yeah, here we go. Because this is a story. I'm going to put it in the private chat here, Tom, and then we can segue straight to that story. This is a story that originally was behind a paywall in the Washington Journal, but Games Radar, among others, were kind enough to give us an insight into what it said there.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what Games Radar says here as soon as we're able to bring it up, Tom.
Sorry, I was on the phone.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right. We can bring up the link that I put there. Yeah. Because this then is the Russo brother story. So this is from Games Radar, but again, that's they completely broke the internet with that GDPR thing. But and I mean that in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow lawsuit may stop the Russo brothers directing another Marvel movie. And then the story then retold from the Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal. Here we go. Bob Chapek never uses the trades. He uses the external investor-oriented media.
Exactly, and this is something that you also pointed out, that Chapek, he is on the side of the audience by way of actually being on the side of investors.
Right.
So he puts his narrative out in the financial papers for the investors to read. And the story then here is that Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow lawsuit may stop the Russo brothers directing another Marvel movie. Now, of course, the Russo brothers, they directed Captain America Civil War, they directed Captain America the Winter Soldier, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame, aka the biggest and most popular MCU movies there are. So they are kind of the big players, and you'd kind of want to keep them around. That may not happen, though, because as it says right here, according to a new report from the Wall Street Journal, the Russo brothers, who previously directed all those big hits, are signaled to be at an impasse with the superhero studio due to the Johnson case. Johnson's suing Disney for allegedly breaking her contract on the recent Black Widow movie, blah, 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 going through the story. The Russo brothers are said to be worried about how any future Marvel movies could potentially be released and how their pay could be affected by streaming. Of course, Marvel's latest movie, Shang-Chi, has only been released in cinemas, and the studio looks set to continue to release movies exclusively in theaters. The same report details how Kevin Feige pushed for a cinema-only release for Black Widow, but hands were forced due to needing Marvel Phase 4 movies and shows to be released in a certain order. If the Russo brothers do end up returning to the MCU, so the door is left open, there's a decent chance they could direct Secret Wars. The duo have spoken before about wanting to adapt the famous comic book storyline, which sees heroes and villains of all timelines transported to a planet called Battle World and forced to fight. And that is the gist of the story that they then bring from the Wall Street Journal. So we learn that the Russo brothers are hesitant about working with Marvel right now because of the lawsuit. What are we to make of this, Kamran?
I have a big smile on my face because this is Bob Chapek's genius playing out. It's what I said on Midnight Edge. It's what I said on Toxic Femininity. It's what I said on my Patreon article, which is that now as the Civil War revs up, Bob Chapek will use an unexpected art of war attack against Feige from some angle he didn't see coming. I didn't see this coming. I didn't see that the Russo brothers were going to be this angle. The same way that I didn't see Frank Oz out of nowhere talking about how the old Disney regime screwed him, right? And in the Wall Street Journal, this is pure genius what he is doing here, because this is the Bob Chapek instigated article, just like the Forbes article was that he used against Kathleen Kennedy, 8 months ago. And the genius of this is now, you've got, as this article points out, these are two blockbuster directors who are, some of the most profitable guys in Hollywood right now. Profitable. This is Wall Street Journal. It's about money, right? And even the headline, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow lawsuit may stop the Russo brothers directing another Marvel movie. So the blame is being put on Scarlett Johansson for disrupting the system with this unexpected lawsuit, and frankly, unnecessary lawsuit. It could have been resolved without one. And it's being put on her, but who is it really being put on? The person who told her to do it, which is Kevin Feige, right? And the idea and the very fact that this comes out, it's essentially Chapek telling Feige, man, you think you've got soldiers in your war? I've got generals. So you've got this lovely, very talented actress who's popular, Scarlett Johansson. Great. But directors have more power than the vast majority of actors in this town. Successful directors do. And the Russo brothers are very successful directors. So I'm going to show you that I'm going to bring, you brought out a gun. I'm going to bring out a bazooka. And I'm going to tell the whole world the Russo brothers don't want to be in a movie if this kind of drama that you're instigating is happening. And that's going to make you look bad, because guess what? The Russo brothers are liked by the club. The club likes them, right? I don't think they can be in the club if they want to be, but they're sort of these independent filmmakers who are doing their own thing, who are welcome to the club anytime they'd like. But they've been against Feige before. And let me remind you how they've been against Feige. Because So if we remember, and I have my thesis as to why Captain Marvel was bizarrely greenlit before Black Widow, an unknown character, essentially to the broad audience. And yes, it has some comic book following, but it was suddenly a character that had not really been in the MCU, suddenly is introduced and has this massive movie and all of this. And I have my personal theories as to what the personal dynamics as to why that happened, but for legal purposes, we won't go into it as to why Mr. Feige chose to advance that particular project. But setting that aside, I think that the directors, the Russo brothers, when asked to shoehorn in this character, they were like, "What the hell is this?" They had done the previous Avengers movie. They knew the movie they wanted to make, and they're like, "Now you want to bring in this character that we haven't seen before, and you're using our movie as a vehicle to advance this character, and nobody cares about this person, nobody cares about this actress." They knew what the vibe was, and so they're like. And so what did we see in the screenplay of that movie? You saw the resistance of the Avengers. When Captain Marvel appears, you have people go, well, "Who the hell are you?" And the characters are saying it. "Where have you been for the last decade? You're not part of this team." The characters say it on screen. And then, she, with all of her superpowers, Thanos punches her off screen. Those are creative choices by these directors who said, "You're going to shoehorn this crap into us because of whatever you got going on behind the scenes in this situation. You're going to make us do this crap that's messing with our movie and put in this character that, these are fan-oriented filmmakers. They're like, we know what's happening here. This isn't about the fans. It's something else you got going on, Kevin. And you're going to make us do this? Well, we're going to embarrass you," which is what that character was embarrassed in that movie. It wasn't a heroic introduction. The other characters didn't like her, and she was humiliated in the big fight. So that is, and they had the power to do it. The Russo brothers had the power to ram that version of that story in, despite Mr. Feige's, "We got to promote her, man. We got to promote her. We got to promote her." They did that. So already I could tell watching the film that the Russo brothers didn't like what was being asked of them, and they had the power to fight back. So the very fact that they would make this comment, it means that they were always on the side of the fans, and they've come to understand that Bob Chapek is on the side of the fans because he's on the side of the money guys, right? And so they willingly, I mean, I don't know that, I don't know that they're quoted here, but that's just it's just like, well, that's what we're hearing, right? And so they're obviously participating in letting this narrative out into the Wall Street Journal, which is saying we've put our chips in the winning side, Kevin. We think Chapek is the future, and we are powerful filmmakers. You're going to do this kind of garbage to screw up Marvel. You already tried it with our movie, and we are not going to be part of this. And we are publicly disassociating from you, and by definition, putting our eggs in Mr. Bob Chapek. So if he can rein in this lawsuit and rein you in, we might come back for this other film. It's up to you. Do you want to fight this? This is an incredible blow. This is, again, what I predicted would happen, that Chapek would use an unexpected avenue to fight these guys. They didn't see it coming. Feige didn't see this coming any more than the Disney exec saw the Frank Oz article coming. None of us saw that coming. I like to pride myself on being a bit of a seer. I knew something was coming. I didn't think it was going to be this angle, but it makes absolute sense because these guys already were done with Feige in the way they handled Captain Marvel. So this is Chapek establishing, you don't know the guns that I got, buddy. This is just the beginning. You bring in some actors, you got Simu Liu talking crap, you got Scarlett Johansson talking crap. I'm going to bring the big money-making directors that you want involved in your projects, and I'm going to show you which side they're on. You need to back down now. And I think this article, this word, shook up Kevin Feige. Like I'm sure he's like, what the hell? Damn it. And there's more coming because Chapek is that kind of guy. You come at him, Feige keeps coming at him straight, and he keeps coming at you sideways, which is pure martial arts, pure art of war. I said this back in February when the Forbes article came out, when I realized who Bob Chapek was, and Bob Chapek was willing to humiliate himself, in Forbes in order to have the sword he needed to go against Kathleen Kennedy. I said to you, Andre and Tom, at the time, I said to you, this guy is the most dangerous guy in Hollywood. This guy is the most dangerous guy. And now we're seeing this article you just brought up, Benedict Cumberbatch. I'll let you talk about it. Part of this is Punch 2. This is Punch 2. This is all being done strategically. It's brilliant.
Yeah, this then actually does come from the trades. This is lifted from the Hollywood Reporter. What we have here on screen, though, is from Digital Spy, which get their story from the Hollywood Reporter. But here, the quote is highlighted because, the Hollywood Reporter thing is huge, and this is just a small part of it. But here it says, in an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, the Doctor Strange actor said, "It's sad what's going on between the lawyers. Just the verbiage and the accusations of, put it in a global pandemic context, the whole thing is just a bit of a mess. We're trying to understand what the revenue streams should be for artists that contribute to the billion-dollar business that is Disney, and it has to be contractualized. How does an artist normal compensation with box office bonuses, how does it work? It's a new paradigm, and it's a very complex one. No one saw this coming, and no one should use hindsight to say, well, it should have been done. That was the first of these films that was going to get a cinematic release during the pandemic and got stalled and stalled and stalled. It's a very new territory." Now, to me, this is interesting for what he doesn't say. Namely, he doesn't name anyone, and he, at the surface, doesn't appear to blame anyone. What could be going on here? What are we missing?
Well, let me give you first context of what it comes out in. It comes out in the Hollywood Reporter, which is also where, remember the three strikes that Bob Chapek did against Lucasfilm? First one was Forbes. Second one was Hollywood Reporter, which established that Chapek was being to knock heads and rein in the studio heads he was trying. And then The Atlantic, right? Which said that essentially Jon Favreau is the future of Star Wars. So those were the 3 strikes, and Kennedy was finished. Hollywood Reporter was strike 2. So Hollywood Reporter is different from Variety and Deadline, which are the other 2 major trades, because those 2, Variety and Deadline, are owned by the same company, Penske Media Corporation, right? And Hollywood Reporter is not. They are rivals, and they've sued each other in the past. So there's a reason that this is being leaked out on Hollywood Reporter, because Chapek has decided that Deadline is not his friend. He's decided that Deadline and Variety are with the club, and Hollywood Reporter is where he can get a voice because they're adversaries, right? And so he's utilizing the Hollywood Reporter. It is not a surprise as it came out of the Hollywood Reporter. Number one, we understand the political context, right? If it came out in Variety and Deadline, you'd be like, wow, what's happening here? This is not a surprise. It's a continuation of what Chapek's already been doing. 2 is Cumberbatch is being put out there as part of this. He's a respected actor. I remember he's English, he's British, and Hollywood loves the British actors because they hold them in high prestige. So you've got this guy, coming out, and so he's respected in the Hollywood crowd, like the Russos are respected, right? And he's using that sort of British passive aggressive, not saying what you're saying, but saying it, right? This is very sad. Instead of saying, I support my fellow artist, Scarlett Johansson, I support her in her effort to get what she deserves. He could have said that. And it's kind of what Simu Liu's been doing, because he's like, well, she's the popular crowd. I'm going to go with the popular crowd, right? And Cumberbatch is like, I know where my bread is buttered. So he comes out with this I'm very sad about this. And, all these things about people couldn't see this coming. So he is saying all the things that Chapek is saying, is that you're trying to, number one, I didn't see the lawsuit coming. So that's the sadness of it. The town didn't see it coming. And then no one can really quite figure out exactly the best way to handle the current situation we're in. And Chapek is doing a pretty good job considering that. And that's what he's implying there, is that we can't see things coming. And that Chapek is essentially then doing a good job because he's trying to manage an unstable situation. This is very much a Chapek, at the least a Chapek sympathetic attack, although I wouldn't be surprised if coming in the Hollywood Reporter that he instigated it. He's like, Benedict, why don't you help me out with this? And Benedict Cumberbatch wisely is not attacking anybody, but he's making his allegiances clear that they're not with Feige and Johansson. But he doesn't want to say that outright so he can get fired by Feige. He doesn't want to do that. So he's playing but he chose to speak up instead of saying, I don't have any real comment about it. He could have just said no comment. He chose to speak up and get himself in the middle of this. And by doing so, he's signaling to Bob Chapek, I'm with you. I'm not going to be one of these people that's going to sue you and create drama. And boss, I know who's the boss right here. You're the boss, right? You're the patron of this situation, not the other guy. So that's Benedict Cumberbatch. That's strike 2. And again, in the same venue that Bob Chapek used to establish that he was going to go against the studio heads, right? Hollywood Reporter. It's absolutely brilliant. And nobody saw this coming either. So here we go.
Well, there we go. Yeah, it's interesting. And look, and every single week there's a new development here, one way or the other. I mean, I can't wait for Eternals now. I mean, not for the movie. I couldn't care less about that. But for the drama surrounding it.
I think Eternals will be the knockout punch. I'm sure it'll do fine economically, but I'm sure. But like I said, I believe that Scarlett Johansson will likely settle, after the Eternals if she doesn't do it before, and that will be the knockout punch for Kevin Feige. He's already. These are counter response articles to the propaganda that Deadline and Variety and the trades have been putting out this week. As I said, they would put out the propaganda that Kevin Feige is a genius and maybe Bob Chapek isn't that smart. And then he gets the Wall Street Journal, and then the rival to Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, comes out essentially on the other camp here within days. This is Friday. All this, I said this stuff on Monday. Look where we are, but at the end of the week, right?
Exactly. Things move quickly.
So this is by Eternals. I think Mr. Feige is going to be in serious trouble, even though it'll be trumpeted in the trades and Deadline and Variety in particular. What a genius he is there too. But I think he's going to be in serious trouble. I think that he just isn't ready to fight this guy the way this guy fights. And I just don't think he knows how to deal with it. He's going to keep doing these frontal attacks that are just not, that he's just going to, he's going to Aikido out of it. He's just not. He's going to use this is martial arts. He's just using, Chapek is using Feige's own energy against him. It's like, blow your wad, buddy, blow your wad. I'll turn it against you, which is what I'm doing. You this week started off with Bob Chapek should be fired, ending with the Russo brothers are with him. That's a pretty big change in 4 days.
Yeah, I should say so. And also I have to say, everyone, you're getting some tremendous industry insight and analysis here. So smash that like button. Smash the like for the future of entertainment.
This is one of our best streams. We're at 1,650 viewers so far.
Yeah, and also I saw a question here. Let's see where it was. Rudy, he wondered, just curious, does 1K likes level you up on the YouTubes? Yes, it kind of does. It kind of does level you up. So everyone smash that like. We're almost to 1,000. And when we have more than 1,600 watching, that should be within. Yes, there we go.
Keep going up. I like this. And so you got to join. Come like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you, Mags, for cheerleading in the comments all the way. That's really awesome. And before we move on, we don't have that many other topics actually, but we have some super chats that we're going to go through right now. Now, obviously, some of these are classics. I'm just going to go and see if there are some that I can get up in the comment. I see we have our good friend Valiant Renegade in the chat here. Hey, Valiant, hope all is well.
And he's such a brilliant analyst.
Starting to normalize in your location. And Jesse Miller is here also, regular on Midnight's Edge After Dark, so go check that out every Tuesday and Thursday. Let's see if there's some super chats. Nope, there's none that I can bring up on screen because StreamYard, the software used, just isn't great for that.
Okay.
But we have everything that we need behind the scenes here, so we're going to do that. Pablo Papano says for $5, Wachowskis peaked with the first Matrix. Was that lawsuit real or intent lore? A black female writer claimed they ripped her off Matrix.
I heard that.
You know anything about?
I heard that. And I mean, there have been rumors in this town for the longest time that the Wachowskis had, again, I'm just relaying rumors. I wasn't present. Within the town, there had long been rumors that the Wachowskis had found a script that was essentially, taking mystical Buddhist Sufi philosophy about the nature of reality and putting it into a cool video game type world, and that they had found this story and essentially said, well, why don't we just do this, right? And instead of buying that script, they simply made their own version. I've often said, and people have asked me on my Patreon this question a lot, that, is idea theft a real thing? And largely it isn't, because most people in Hollywood, if they come across a decent script or just an idea they like, will just buy it out so they don't have to deal with legal problems, as will happen in these circumstances, right? But it does happen. And, all I can say is we have seen the Wachowskis have not, they haven't really lived up to the brilliance of that first movie subsequently, which leads to questions as to how much of that was their brilliance, right? And I think that's a fair question for people to ask.
Yeah, like Speed Racer really didn't do that many wonders now, did it? But yeah.
They had this other movie that that was like this whole movie set in another universe with whatever. It didn't work.
Yeah. And then Mickey Rooney says for €2, I'm sad about Tripwire's CEO. Unfair firing. I can't say I'm too familiar with that.
I regrettably am not as familiar, so forgive me. I don't have information to give on that.
Yeah, I have to check that out. I don't know what that is at the top of my head. So we're going to move out and maybe we'll circle back to that later to quote someone else. Yeah. Dashdees says for $5 I still play Knights of the Old Republic and have since release. It's the last one I enjoy. Please don't turn it to horse shit too. I wonder if Teletubbies are still on. Yeah, well.
Oh, by the way, the chat said it was Jupiter Ascending was the name. Mega Kirkman said that they didn't like the movie, and it wasn't well received.
I was so disappointed by that movie. It looked so good in the posters and everything, and then you had like, it was so bad. I wanted to like it, but it was so bad.
I mean, and you would want movies like that, which are new. They're not based on IP. They're new ideas, especially sci-fi operas, like space operas. You want new ones of that, so they're not always like, let's just remake that, right? But when it doesn't work, it's a tragedy.
Yeah, it is. And there's one that I can get up on screen. Our good friend and my fellow countryman, Paulus Plain, says, Andre, did you know that Star Trek, the original season and first seasons of Next Generation, was shown on Sky 1, Monday to Friday?
Okay.
I did not know that. But here's the question then. When was it shown?
Yeah. Was it the 90s or?
Yeah, because it certainly wasn't shown at the time when I was watching Sky. And at that time, it wasn't Sky 1. Then it was just a Sky channel, like Sky 1 and Sky 2. That came later. Yeah, moving on. Thomas Bartholdi says Jupiter Ascending, more like it. Yeah, that was.
And it was good actors. It was a good cast. I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. And Jesse Miller points out the only thing that he liked about Speed Racer was looking at Christina Ricci, and she's so woke now. It's so disappointing. So yeah, well, wants to be with the company. I remember seeing the trailer for Speed Racer, and just based on the trailer, I decided I'm never in hell seeing that movie because the visuals just put me off that badly, and I never have.
I kind of had that reaction too, and I was disappointed with the second and the third Matrixes. I liked the second one. The third one was very disappointing for me, and none of them I felt lived up to the first one. So I was like, I don't know. I think these two are losing steam here. So I just wasn't motivated to go see it.
I have to share with you my favorite memory of the Matrix Part 2. I've never remembered which one was called what of Parts 2 and 3. Like I like the highway chase, and that was pretty much it. But I was in uni at the University of Oslo at the time.
Okay.
When they came out, and there was like this friend of mine who got tickets to the midnight premiere of The Matrix Part 2, because I was like the shit at the time. And it was as anticipated as Spider-Man, the Avengers, and Harry Potter, and all of those rolled into one. That was the hype. And every single day, he gloated, I got the tickets for the midnight premiere. I'm going to see it before, and this is the completely sold out midnight premiere. So I'm going to see it at least. Oh, actually, and it gets better because this was like a midnight premiere a week in advance of the regular release. So he was going to see the movie a week before everyone else. So he was bragging, throwing the tickets in everyone's faces. Look, I got the movie. It says right here, begins at 1 minute past midnight. And then the day comes, and then we ask him, hey, how was the movie? How did you like it? And he's like, what are you talking about? It's tonight. And then we pointed out to him, you said it began at 1 minute past midnight on, I don't know, June 14th or something like that. Yeah. Well, then you actually had to leave the evening of the 13th. And just the look of his face when he realized that, oh shit, he bungled with the whole 24 hours. And he wasn't the only one, because after that they started putting 23:59 on the tickets instead of 1 minute.
Yeah, no, that's what they needed to, because we're human and we forget, the date change at midnight, whatever. Oh, I can imagine that poor guy's, because he was so proud of this, and he realized this after the day had passed, right? And so he had missed the movie.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, no, that can't be right. Yeah.
Oh my God!
What
I loved the most about Matrix 2 was Monica Bellucci, and I was like, she should be in all these movies. Where the hell's and she was great. Monica Bellucci was great in Matrix 2. And then whatever. It is what it is.
Anyway, moving on. We have some more classic super chats here. Revcore says for $5, yeah, that Knights of the Old Republic remake is doomed. They just lost me. I will wait for the fan-made remake rather than this crap. So yeah, I don't blame you. Hurin the Steadfast says for 10 Canadian dollars, thank you so much. This game actually got me onto Star Wars. I got it with the original Xbox in 2003. Never watched the original trilogy till after I completed this game. I will just play the original. Yeah, I wonder how many have that story that actually discovered Star Wars through the game. I mean, there must be some.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's like I said, the visuals in that game are stunning, and there's a story there that makes you want to see that whole universe and films on that universe. And so, I'm sorry they're going to screw this up and learn the lesson the hard way, just like the old Lucasfilm just learned.
Yeah. And T Neil 89 says, with that context, remaking from the ground up likely means rolling up one's sleeves and diligently start ruining everything. Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, that's what deconstruction is. That's what deconstruction is. You're looking at see what works and it's not morally right that it should work. So let's take it out.
Exactly. That's a great way of putting it. This works, and that's not morally not right. Let's change it. Yeah. So yeah, good stuff. Hypergiver 2 says for $5, unpopular opinion. I hated Knights of the Old Republic because of how it made the Grey Jedi popular to the masses. Either you're a Jedi or you're not.
Yeah, well, okay, I respect that opinion. I think in reality, in my study of mysticism, which is what the Force is based on, it's based on Taoism, it's based on Sufism and other things that Lucas studied. There are gray practitioners of those paths. So I'm not so sure that that's outside the realm of the mythology Lucas used. So,
yeah. And then Roof Korean the Based said Drew Karpyshyn isn't a woke writer. Left BioWare years ago over woke politics. Female POC Raven, the real Raven. Vindictive productions like Matrix 4. And Epic Knight of Sir Knight says, I know about KOTOR remaster. Well, we wish it was a simple remaster, but evidently not. And Joachim Stark says for 50 Swedish krona, KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, watching others make light and dark decisions. The game that taught me that I also like watching others play games, not just playing them myself. This appears to be a great game. Too bad it's not on the Mega Drive. Destiny Captain says, Tom were aware of Hastings Music's books and video. They shut it in 2016. They started in the 70s and eventually operated Walmart-sized stores in Texas. I'll ask him when he's back here. And the SSB candidate says for 100 Mexican dollars. Oh, thank you. Hello. When will you get the video game insiders to tell us the insides of the industry? Why did Nintendo place the Minecraft characters playable in Smash? And why is Sony so decadent right now? Yeah, I have to get some insiders to tell me because I have no clue.
Is Jesse in the chat?
Well, maybe Jesse can help us out with that. But Tom, now that you're back again, Destiny Captain wondered if you were aware of Hastings Music, Books, and Video.
Hastings?
Yeah. But based on just judging from your tone there and how you answered, I can say that no, you're not aware.
Yeah.
They were the shit in Texas apparently.
Okay.
Not offhand. I'd have to look it up though. Yeah.
Yeah. And Adam THM says for $9.99. Thank you so much. I think it's still too early. A lot of woke people work on games to make great stories. I think it's time to just wait for now, because they have lots of vets who worked on Knights of the Old Republic that care.
Okay.
And in terms of what the Mary Sue Reyes and how like this woman accused Anakin of being the same thing, Professor Afonso pointed out that Anakin lost 2 of the 3 fights he was in. And then we got this one here. Dashti says Justin Trudeau makes sense now. She's probably his Minister of Diversity and Inclusion. Context of that may be lost, but yeah, Justin Trudeau, he has his way, doesn't he?
Yeah, and hope for you Canadians will let him go in the near future, because you have an election coming, right? So I hope. I wish you freedom.
I'm terrified about our own election here next week, but we'll see.
And Jesse is here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm saying Jesse was.
I was going to see if Andre would repeat that question, but it sounded like you were going to make a point there. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Cameron.
No, I was just, my only point is, I don't. Are you having an election in Norway that you're talking about?
We're having like a governmental election next week.
Well, we're having the big one here in California, which is the recall election, which is the 17th, right? And I'm very much of the view, very public about it, that Mr. Newsom has to go. And I'll tell you, many people in Hollywood believe that privately. Publicly, they'll all endorse him. But I've received messages from major talent managers representing A-list, Oscar-winning talent saying Newsom's a scumbag. We got to get rid of him. He's ruining the economy. And so here, I will show this, my little one-moment politics here. I've got my little sign up for the candidate I'm supporting, Kevin Kiley, for governor. And
nice. Very nice. And then moving on with the super chats, because this was like a huge thing that he wondered about gaming. So I'm sure that we can have Jesse on for that, but that's going to derail the rest of this show if we do that right now. So
I just wanted you to repeat the question. You can probably answer in the chat.
Yeah. And Revkor says, Andre, I know you are a Mega Drive only guy, but find on YouTube the game just for the story. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. And the question, Tom, was, let's see here, if I find it again. It was the SSB candidates who says, hello, when will you get the video game insiders to tell us the insides of the industry? Why did Nintendo place the Minecraft characters playable in Smash? And why is Sony so decadent right now? Those are the questions. I have no idea the answers.
Well, there you go.
I do have the next super chat, and that was also from this, who said for $10, thank you so much. EA now owns BioWare, and all they care about the money they get from Battlefield and their monopoly hold on football video games with Madden. They're not going to fix BioWare. Are they still doing Madden games? I mean, they actually had those on the Sega Mega Drive. Lots of them.
I don't know. I don't have any knowledge about this. So I'm just listening.
I was never into sports games myself. Let's see, and then Lonnie Holcomb said that this was when Kamran's internet went out. Bummer, he was in the middle of a great explanation. Well, that continued afterwards. Gran Wasu 42 says for €5, hail Andre and Tom and Kamran. Shang-Chi still could fail. It is a marathon and not a sprint.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and you just want everyone to believe.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I stated that in my Patreon article, which is that there's a long journey ahead. And the second weekend is going to reveal if this movie has any legs at all. We don't know, right? People kept touting that Black Widow had a massive drop the second weekend. We'll see if this has and you said the excuse was they had a massive drop because people were watching it online and then they were pirating it online. If this movie has a massive drop this upcoming weekend, what's the excuse if there's no online excuse?
They can't even blame, Operation Delta Force because so many apparently went the last weekend when it opened.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. This is going to be interesting, but again, I just think that the narrative is already spinning out of Mr. Feige's control. The Russo brothers was a real shot to the head there. That was a statement that A-list filmmakers don't have chosen their side in this war, and it isn't Mr. Feige's. And to the Wall Street Journal, that's a real. And I think that's what Mr. Chapek is going to do. Once you start trying to put out, it's time for Chapek to resign or be removed, he's going to fight back. When you put that kind of thing to the narrative in the industry, you fight that, he's going to go for your head, which is what happened here.
Yeah. And Major Chow, we can also bring this one up on stream, says, excellent stream, gents. Always a pleasure to listen to Mr. Pasha's expositions. I really like his passion and energy. I could agree more about Chapek game. So yeah, that's awesome. And then we have some more of the classic super chats here that I'm going to go through real quick. Well, before then, Joel Rice says for €5, seeing Kamran smile about this whole debacle makes me smile. Skilling is great. Hail Mead and Kamran Pasha. And also the awesome chat and mods. Yes, indeed. Hail everyone, and special thanks to the mods.
Yeah,
for being here, helping everything be so awesome as you guys helping it be. And also, we get pointed out, Kamran is crushing it today. Yes,
thank you.
Always is.
Well, get up and don't sit on it anymore. You won't
well, yeah, and we're gonna, and I'll talk about it more at the end. But if you believe I'm crushing it, please come join my Patreon, because I did a very lengthy analysis of some of the things I'm talking about here about what's happening with the Civil War, and I predicted some of the things that we're now seeing within 48 hours of me putting the article out, playing out, right? And so come join me on Patreon. You know what's been amazing on this channel, Andre, in particular, is that every time I come on this channel, my Patreon's just quantum leap afterwards. So I hope that trend will continue, and I love the people in this audience. So please come join me, because I've got a lot more fun stuff coming up. I'm putting out another chapter of my novel in a few hours, and I'm putting up shortly my own sort of guide to screenwriting that'll be coming out. So come join me there. We'll go back to you after my little plug.
Yeah. So yeah, do check that out. And going back to the super chats, then we have, let's see where we were. Moses A. Weaver says, Miss KK, let my Kamran go. TM Alfred Cornelio. Yeah, okay. Something's missing my head there, but thanks anyway. And then we have from my fellow countryman, Sebastian Skardheim, says for 55 Norwegian krona. Tusen takk, min venn. Remember when entertainment was about giving people what they want and, yeah, entertain? Wokeness has made the industry insane. Hi from Norway. Yes.
And it's also made it unprofitable, which is why the money people will always assert them. See, one of the things is that we think that these woke ideologies are invincible, and the culture has been hijacked, and they'll never be able to stop them. None of these ideas work. And eventually, when something doesn't work, it starts messing with your bottom line. And that's why people were shocked when the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc collapsed within a period of a few days, essentially, right? They were shocked after 70 years because it was building up. Something doesn't work. It just ends when it ends. And so this woke ideology is actually the heir of that communist ideology.
Well, House of Cards falls pretty easy.
Yeah. And so, and
I love the point you brought up earlier too. Is like I want to go back to not just the cocaine and capitalism of the past, as I always boast, but you brought up the point about how Mars, the Mars issue with John Carter of Mars and Mars Attack, or Mars Needs Moms. I mean, like I remember back in the day, if they even got wind that, oh, there's a bunch of people in the Bible Belt who won't go see a movie with Mars in the title, take that shit out. Like they used to freaking panic over that stuff. What happened to that? Nowadays, it's like, fuck you if you don't like it.
Well, the thing is, there was this, when I was there was this whole thing that, well, Mars is cursed. I was like, no, I just think you're putting out bad movies. And so when a movie that you don't know anything about, like John Carter, there's no cultural reference for anymore, is put out there. You don't even know what the hell it's about or where it's set. Just say John Carter of Mars. People aren't against Mars. They need context. They're against bad movies. And John Carter was an interesting movie. I won't necessarily say it's a bad movie.
I agree with you 100%. But I wish they'd go back to that stupid way of thinking as opposed to this nonsense they're dealing with now. Because, I mean, I'd rather them be like, oh, God, soccer moms don't like yellow. Make sure there's no yellow in this movie. Like, that's the way they used to be, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that stupid finds its way in other forms.
Exactly. Well, now it's worse, if you ask me. I'd rather go back to that, was my point. I'd rather deal with that stupidity.
Yeah, that stupidity from time to time could look out and create a masterpiece, just not always. I mean, I'm going to do a whole retrospective on John Carter at one point, because there's a lot to go into that. Well, yeah, I'll let you know. I have a few more retrospectives to go through first. But
I know the actress who played Deja in there. I talked about her.
Nice,
and she's a lovely actress, and again, the
screwed
movie
by her agent to put her in only flop after flop there that one summer.
Yeah, I mean, it is what she's. All I can say is she's very talented, and she deserves an even better career than she's had, and she's had a good career. And the movie is just, the whole thing was a tragedy. But I'll be happy if you will. I'll be happy to come pipe in whenever you do your retrospective.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll let you know. Like I have, like, let's see, at least 5 retrospectives to do first, but I'll get to that one before long.
Yeah.
Actually, that's next year, because then it'll be the 10th year anniversary.
Already?
Okay, that'll be good.
Time flies.
Wow, 10 years since that means that was a 10-year anniversary since I was at Disney, because I was there when all that went down.
Wow.
I was there when the whole thing went down.
Tony Movie has a question for you. One more.
Yeah.
Says Cameron, what are your thoughts on Tom Rothman as an executive? Yeah, we've answered this a few times, Andre.
Yeah, but let's hear what Kamran has to say.
Let's hear Cameron's take.
Yeah. Look, I think Tom is accurate in his understanding of Rothman's journey. I think Rothman is good in certain areas, and when he's allowed to do what he's good at, I think he prospers. And it's like a lot of executives, is that they have their personal passions and their specialties, and maybe superheroes ain't his thing, but other stuff is. And so I think he's a successful guy. He's going to be around for a while, and he should just focus on doing what he does best.
Yeah, that's a summary right there.
Notice there's a lot of talk about Christopher Nolan in the news. Don't be surprised.
Yeah.
If
Nolan's
Tom
back in the
news, manages to woo him over to Sony.
I would not be surprised in the slightest if he did. Yeah. And then Pedro Ribeiro says, if you need expertise on a Dune one, I'm free to consult. Oh, thank you, but that one is already out. So if you look in the channel, we already have a Dune retrospective out there. So I hope you will find it mostly to your satisfaction. Yeah, because Tom didn't know anything about Dune at the time. So
I'm damn near an expert now.
Yeah, after doing that retrospective. That's the irony.
And I watched Dune last night in 4K.
Yeah, how was it?
Looks pretty good. And I still have the same gripe you do, Andres. You're going to go back to the original negative. Why didn't you scan it all and give us the ultimate edition?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's such a waste. Like there's only one version of Dune that matters, and that they couldn't recreate that in 4K. Unbelievable.
I will say this.
Yeah. And Pedro will check out our Dune retrospective. Cool.
I will say this
forward to your feedback.
The 4K. It's not a reference quality in any way, but in one sense, I believe because all the 35 millimeter footage in the film doesn't look that great. It's from an era where the film stock is shit.
Okay.
But when they switch over to the special effects shots, I believe all that was shot in 70 millimeter. That stuff looks pretty damn good. Believe it or not. I mean, sure, it shows some of the age with the lines and stuff around the opticals and stuff like that. But specifically, like when they do the eye shots, because you jump from the 35 millimeter into a 70 millimeter process shot, still looks better than the 35 millimeter. Yeah, the Arrow edition. That's right. So yeah, I mean, I can recommend it. It's a little pricey. Arrow did all right outside of not allowing or not getting the other cuts. Outside of that, it's full of all kinds of goodies and stuff as far as behind the scenes stuff, but no deleted scenes. That's the other thing that bothers me. It's like, at least you could have put the deleted scenes in there so we as fans could have reconstructed it.
Yeah, that's pretty shitty. If they only put the 4K version of the theatrical movie with nothing else.
My guess is it's Universal's fault or De Laurentiis, one of the two.
Yeah, well, that actually would be Universal now, because I think they're the ones that don't.
Well, I think De Laurentiis still has international distribution, because the negative had to go through De Laurentiis. It looked like through my.
Yeah.
When I looked
so can I give you a moment of a Dino De Laurentiis story?
Please,
yes,
we love
do.
Dino stories.
This is actually
and I'm going to need a Dino story for my next retrospective anyway. So yeah, do share.
Okay, so this is a story that I'm actually planning to write a Patreon article about of one of examples of how the Grim Reaper has intersected my career in Hollywood, right? So Dino De Laurentiis, his people, his lovely wife Martha and his executives had approached me some years back to potentially remake 3 Days of the Condor, which is this classic film from the 70s with Robert Redford as essentially this CIA analyst who one day comes back into the office and everyone in the office has been killed. Like he's just an analyst, he's not a spy. And so he's like, and he goes on the run because he's discovered something. He's discovered some kind of conspiracy, and he didn't even realize he discovered a conspiracy. The conspiracy he discovered, this is like 1972, 73 when the movie came out, is that the U.S. was planning to invade the Middle East to take control of its oil resources, right? That would never happen, right? So, but he discovered this, and he had accidentally bumbled into this sort of CIA black plan that was being done. And so members of the CIA said, we got to get rid of these people. They know something that the rest of the agency is not supposed to know about. So it's all this spy thriller where he's running and trying to survive from other CIA agents trying to kill him, right? And so that's such a classic movie. And then the De Laurentiis company said, we're interested in remaking this film, and we really loved a couple of your scripts that we read. We think you're the right guy to remake this. I was like, oh my God. Remake 3 Days of the Condor with Dino De Laurentiis, right? This is the moment. This is the Oscar moment of my career, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's doing it." And then I developed a story with Dino's wife Martha and the executives, and they all liked it. We came in to pitch Mr. De Laurentiis himself, and you have to understand his offices are Alfred Hitchcock's original offices on the studio lot. And there's like a silhouette of Alfred Hitchcock on the door, right? Because this was Hitchcock's original office. And so we go in there and I meet him. And Mr. De Laurentiis, I'm sure he was fluent in English, but he spoke in Italian the entire time because he could. And I had to have everything he said translated to me, right? And I pitched him ideas, and I'm just, this guy's one of the grand studio moguls of history, right? And I couldn't believe I'm sitting with this guy and having him lecture me in Italian about story structure. But he liked what we were doing. And so then they wanted to have a follow-up meeting where they would go and really get the story down. Then we were going to announce in the trades that Kamran Pasha had been selected to remake 3 Days of the Condor, right? So I'm then invited to Dino De Laurentiis' house. So we go to his house. He's got this beautiful mansion up in the hills, and he's big into. I guess he was a Leo astrologically. He loved lions, and so there are all these stone lions all over the estate. It was very nice. So go in there and have this lovely meeting in Dino De Laurentiis' house with his wife, and sitting there, and we're going over. We've got the story down. We're ready to go, and this is incredibly exciting. And my agents, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're about to remake 3 Days of the Condor. This is huge. This is huge for your career." And I'm so excited. I thank Mr. De Laurentiis. I leave his home. The next day, or like 2 or 3 days later, when we're about to make the announcement that I'm the one chosen to do this, I wake up and I see the trades. A news flash comes on. Dino De Laurentiis passes away in his sleep. He passed away. He passed away. And it was literally, I was like, and I was just like, number one, it's a loss because he's one of the great producers of our time, right? And I had gotten to know him as a human being, and I sort of loved his sort of elderly, grandfatherly energy. And I was in his house just a couple of days before he passed away, and this was going to be his next project. And so of course that didn't happen. I was invited to Mr. De Laurentiis' funeral. I went, and all the stars were there. Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up, and it was very interesting for me. Is like because I was like the last thing he was working on before he passed away, and so I have other stories like that I want to put on a special Patreon article where the Grim Reaper has come in at exactly the moment I'm about to announce a major project and taken it away. But that's an actual adventure that I had with Dino De Laurentiis, and God bless him. It's still one of the great treasured memories I have that I crossed his path, right? And that I was about to do 3 Days of the Condor. And it's one of those things where God just has a sense of humor. And what I loved about his, and the reason I say sense of humor is that even in his passing, Dino, at his funeral, the message we got is Dino did not want his funeral to be a sad event. It was going to be a party and a celebration of his life. And everyone was asked to wear something that was bright red. So I wore a bright red tie because red was Dino's favorite color, and he was a very fiery personality, right? And so everyone was there, and it really was a joyous occasion where people were telling stories and laughing. And his coffin is laid out there, and Schwarzenegger's out getting up right next to the coffin and telling funny stories of Dino De Laurentiis' and the adventures that he had with him. And so he's really one of the great last of the moguls. And so I'm glad God gave me the chance to cross his path. I'm kind of sad I didn't do 3 Days of the Condor with Dino De Laurentiis, but that's a story, and I've got other stories like that. So if you want to hear more stories like that, subscribe to my Patreon, because I've got an old article with these kinds of misadventures where the Grim Reaper comes in with me and incredibly famous people and says, "Yeah, you're not going to work with that guy." Oh, next. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that's the irony of faith. So yeah. And then, before we get back to the classics, Jeff C. says for $20. Thank you so much, Jeff. That's going to go a long way towards keeping the lights on. Midnight's Edge is the perfect platform that goes into depth into pop culture with an objective, analytical, business, and financial-oriented eyes. A perfect guide for those who want to create an IP or want to work in Hollywood. Well, thank you. That's kind words.
Yeah, I would second that. That's the reason that I've become a regular on this channel. And it's the only channel that can get me to wake up at 9 a.m. in the morning, Los Angeles time, because I'm a late sleeper. And it's because this channel is special. And it isn't just, rumors and stories and wishful thinking. Andre and Tom and this whole group here have some really deep contacts into the system, and they're getting real information. And most importantly, they do objective analysis. That's why I feel welcome here.
Thank you for the kind words.
We're always happy to have you.
Yeah, and with that, back to the classic super chats. Then we have, this is a good one. Roof Korean Be Based wonders for $5. Kamran, how does ScarJo's situation resonate outside the Disney bubble? Are other actors looking at their contracts? Writers, contractors, production? What's going on?
Well, when it was initially announced, there was a massive shockwave in Hollywood because, again, it wasn't expected and didn't need to be. This could have been resolved and normally would be resolved. So there was another agenda as to why it was happening. We all sensed that very quickly, right? So some actors immediately jumped on it, or at least the representatives jumped on it and said, well, here's our angle to try to get our client more money. And so we suddenly, there was some grumbling that Emma Stone was going to speak out about, she got screwed on Cruella. And suddenly we had, within days, a new Cruella was announced, right? So obviously they paid her off. And I think that's what's been happening is that on Jungle Cruise, I think a new Jungle Cruise has been announced, and I'm sure they've quietly resolved any contractual issues about streaming in those things. So what happened immediately afterwards is people started seeing how they could profit from it, right? But now that wave is largely over, because I think now that Disney knows how to handle that situation after this shock move by Ms. Johansson, now it's about people getting on sides. And I think the wiser actors recognize that Mr. Feige may not be the guy in charge, in a year or a year and a half or whatever, even maybe less. And the wiser actors who are able to see what's coming, like Mr. Cumberbatch, are beginning to disassociate from this situation and say that it's tragic rather than coming out. Because immediately afterwards, you had the words, well, Emma Stone is, all people are supporting Scarlett, right? Now people are like Mr. Cumberbatch are like, well, this whole thing's really sad and tragic, and I don't want to get involved in it, right? That's a pulling back from that. So it's going to leave Ms. Johansson largely isolated now. And I just don't think she's going to win this lawsuit. And I think she will settle it.
Excellent point right there. So, yeah. Then Luca Rock says for $5, just wanted to say thanks for the great retrospectives. Please make more soon. Yes, actually, I'm working on them.
I thought that's what brought up the retrospectives before, but there you go.
Yeah, no, actually, that came.
And I've been working on some myself too, but yeah,
there will be plenty retrospectives to come. So go grab some coffee, Tom. I will give some tease. I'm working on retrospectives for the original Red Sonja, Kull the Conqueror, and the 2011 Conan, which has its 10th anniversary this year, and a redux of the 1996 Phantom retrospective, because that has its 25th anniversary this year. Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sad for Red Sonja, because Red Sonja is such an incredible, sexy character, and I think Hollywood's going to screw it up real badly. I knew some of the screenwriters in early versions of Red Sonja that were going to keep it very true to the source material. And that wasn't woke enough for the industry, and so I think we're in a different direction now.
No, it is, because you also have Avi Lerner, who is the producer. He's like as unwoke as you possibly can.
Oh, he is old school. Just want to make money, man.
Yeah, but he figured out that we've been trying to get this thing off the ground for like 10, 15 years now, and we've paid a fortune with nothing to show for it. If the industry is willing to give us money for woke, let's go all in on woke so we get our money.
he's just he's an old school producer. I mean, Mr. Lerner is a very famous old school producer. I know people that have worked with him. He needs to get it done. And if he's like, okay, well, the market doesn't watch sexy hot, at least the market, as in the Hollywood market, the executives are uncomfortable with sexy hot, chainmail, bikini Red Sonja. Now let's just give them what they want and just make the damn movie and get it done.
Right. Actually, I have a story that connects both or all three: Red Sonja, Dune, and Dino De Laurentiis.
Okay, I hear. Let's hear.
But Andre forgot a few retrospectives we're working on. We're working on a He-Man one, of course.
That of course, but
I've been trying to get a Ninja Turtle one done for a while. Plus, the Highlander one is another one that's on the horizon as well. But okay, so here's the story. Who's the actor who plays Raban? He also played Bluto in the Popeye movie.
I always forget his name.
Paul. But, I can't remember his last name. It's like Paul something though. But he was telling this story. I was watching the making of stuff, and he was telling.
He's in Red Sonja too.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say. Okay,
sorry.
No, they're at the rap party for. They're at the rap party for Dune, and what's Dino's daughter's name? Rafaela. She goes. Paul. Yeah, Paul Smith. Thank you, Crease. She goes, Paul. Did you like working for us? And he's like, well, yeah. She's like, you want to keep working for us? He's like, yeah. He goes, to see that lady over there? He's like, yeah. Go throw her in the pool. So he goes over. He throws this lady in the pool. It turns out it's the publicist for the for the studio. But lo and behold, 6 months later, he gets a phone call. Hey, we're making Red Sonja. Get your ass over here.
That's great. That's a true Hollywood story. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, I probably would have insisted. Can I have that in writing?
Right.
Because
he was like, he's like, I thought about it for a minute. He's like, well, fuck it. And he did it. And he's like, he didn't know who she was at the time, but yeah.
Yeah.
He was so good, both as Bluto and as Raban the Beast. I have to say, he was so good.
He's they reflect parts of his sort of character. Of how
a great character actor, yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome with those that have like those characters in them because But anyway, moving on with the super chats, we still have a couple to go through here. Film School Rookie says for $19.99. Thank you so much. Hey Kamran, I'm looking to have people directly related to Star Wars do interviews for my Star Wars documentary. Mm-hmm. I've also asked Gina Carano and Sam Witwer via Twitter, and let me know if you're interested.
I mean, best way to reach out to me is, you can contact me through my Instagram, which is my Kamran Pasha 72, or you can, reach out to me on Patreon. And those are about the best ways to contact me at this point, since I'm no longer on Twitter. And we can talk about how I could be involved if that makes sense.
Yeah, there you have it, Film School. So just reach out to Kamran. And then Timon Flip says for 5 Brazilian reals, have you guys seen the new characters of God of War Ragnarok? Fat Thor and Black Girl. I have not seen that, but I will say that in Norse mythology, Thor actually is kind of fat. It's the buff Marvel Thor that's actually kind of like getting it wrong in terms of mythology. When Thor was fat in Endgame, that was actually closer to the mythological Thor.
Yeah. Well, and I remember there was a graphic novel somebody told me about, which I'd love to get a hold of. If anyone in the chat knows what this graphic novel is, apparently it's a graphic novel set in World War II about essentially the Nazis, as we know, they're involved in the occult, right? We know that, and that they were essentially looking for the Rainbow Bridge out of Norse mythology that they believe the Norse gods could be contacted, and that essentially they're able to activate that dimensional doorway to Asgard, to the real Asgard, and then the Norse gods, Odin and the others, come out, and they take the Nazi side because they love this, they get the berserker culture, right, of the Nazis. And then in that graphic novel, apparently Loki comes out, and Loki's like, he takes the American side because he's just like, I'm just gonna have fun with these guys and screw up the other gods. I don't know what that graphic novel is. If anyone knows what that one is, I'd love to read it because the idea sounds so wonderful.
I've never heard of that, but yeah. Sounds cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, do let us know in the comments if this is something that seems familiar. And I'm going to carry on with the super chats.
Please.
Goskar Farrat also says for $19.99. Thank you so much. New Matrix looks like an uninspired rehash of the first Matrix.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not hyped at all. Come on, give us something new. Well, you will be getting, if rumors are true, you'll be getting a new Chosen One. So there's that.
Yeah.
Of course, if you like that, it's a completely different matter. But so yeah, they'll make it new.
Strong whammy power in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I just hear they add an extra X to the Matrix, so it's the Matrix X now.
Well, I would watch that. I'm pretty sure Matrix Triple X is
no, not Triple X, just one.
Two. Okay.
You know, like Latinx.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, like a Matrix Triple X actually would be something worth watching.
Yeah, like this, not three, but just an extra one.
Yeah, just not enough. And then STR Red Wolf says for $5, Speed Racer movie was but some of the music made by the staff was good. Mm-hmm. They hired Dino Mike for some of the music, which is on the thumb.
I will give them that. Like, that's the only other thing they did that was ambitious, and I'll give them credit for trying something that had never really been attempted before like that. And it did kind of fall flat on its face in the box office, but it looks pretty. It sounds cool. It does feel kind of like the Speed Racer cartoon. So I guess it didn't completely fail in that respect, but it is almost an unwatchable mess as far as the story goes. Like, that's the problem. It's just, to me, I don't know. It's been years since I've tried to watch Speed Racer, but I'll give them that. I will give them that. Like that's the only other movie besides the first Matrix that really kind of, I guess I could see why they're still around. But other than that, I'm just like, I don't get it other than the politics. What about you, Cameron?
You know, it's all I can say is that I don't think it's going to work. let's. I mean, that's. Yeah.
But like, this is basically like, it has its fans, but I don't feel like the movie did do anything other than.
I don't have anything to say beyond that. I just.
Andre, did you like the Speed Racer movie?
I didn't even see it. I saw the trailer, and there are a couple of times when I've seen the trailer, and the trailer has spoken loud and clear, saying this movie ain't for you. Don't even try showing up. And the trailer for that movie is one of the most off-putting trailers I've seen in my life.
Well, part of it is, the Wachowskis are well known to be woke in their personal lives, right? I mean, they've transitioned, they've got a lot of stuff going on, right? So, I just think that increasingly they may be disconnected from their audience, and I think Speed Racer is an example of that. But and I think we'll see that in the new Matrix is just a disconnect, and that may just be their own artistry of who they are as human beings.
Planner Aspect says, I love Speed Racer. Any movie where where an active beehive can be used as a weapon during a race and you don't question it is doing something right. Yeah, like I said, that was probably one thing. And Techman brings up also they did V for Vendetta as well.
Which is a good movie.
That is a good movie.
You got to be.
That is a good movie.
That did probably. It was probably a lucky, happy accident.
They had a lot of help though in the source material.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, they had great. And I will say this. And
Bound wasn't too bad.
I'd be careful how I phrase it, which is that in that movie, which is another one of these strange Hollywood prescient movies, the totalitarianism we saw is the result of a bug being spread through society and being utilized by the government to lock everybody down. So that was just very interesting and prescient. As we know, there's a lot of what people might suggest is predictive programming in Hollywood, where events that are going to happen historically have a strange, ability to appear in movies in advance.
Many British comics are eerie like that. If you read Judge Dredd, it's the comics. They're like eerie in many ways. And Script Doctor points out the Wachowskis only produced V. It was written and directed by other people.
I didn't think they directed it either. I couldn't remember.
And that's probably for the best, as it turned out, right? I mean, it ended up being, I think, a very solid movie, and it ended up becoming the closest thing they've done to a cultural meme. That sort of the mask. During, let's say, the height of all this madness in Los Angeles in the last year, when I had to go to the grocery store to like, oh, you got to wear a mask. All right, then I wore that mask, right? I wore the V for Vendetta mask, and I ended up becoming very popular in my local grocery store. Say, hey, there's that guy. People go, I love your mask, right? Because I got to make a little political statement as well as a baby.
Ain't nobody gonna get away with that though, unfortunately, nowadays.
And Reservoir Frog points out it's only one Wachowski. The other one has nothing to do with it. Yeah, actually, I reacted to that in the trailer, that it was directed by just one.
Now, here's the thing, though, is I guess the other one is still technically involved, though, but yeah, I don't know. I've heard conflicting things. So.
I'm not concerned by that or care about that one.
I don't think it's going to help or hurt either way, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Big Daddy MRI says for another $19.99. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate that. This whole Disney saga, maneuvering, Cloak and Dagger, Gina, and Chapek taking the helm over Iger, quelling the rebellion and becoming monetarily stable again, would make an incredible documentary. Mr. Pasha, write it.
Well, just watching it play out, it's better than anything we're seeing in the movies right now, and it really is.
Well, we've kind of been documenting it in real time.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. I think someone should make a documentary based on broadcasts of the journey.
Yeah, Midnight's Edge will do that.
Well, speaking of that, if anybody's listening out there, I was thinking the same thing when I'm watching the Dune stuff last night. I'm like, why don't we ever get asked? Well, like we definitely would work out some really good deals for any of our retrospectives or interviews. If anybody works for these boutique companies or anything like that, or interested, just hit us up. I've talked about doing some documentaries myself, so I'm not going to give any.
There's a real market for it, and people should get involved. And I think they should be brought. Your retrospectives should be put out as much of the marketplace as possible. And so, professional documentary, everyone get in touch with these guys.
Yeah, and then moving on, we have a few more to go through here. Let's see, we got that one. Mecha J says for $5, Mandalorian actress Emily Swallow recently spoke out on Gina Carano's firing from Disney and discussed the dangers of cancel culture. Mm-hmm. Yes, she did. More importantly, I believe it was The Atlantic that also wrote about the new Puritans that the SJWs are. I think that was actually much more important. But yeah,
they're both efforts. Like I said, they're both efforts to try to get this, this face hugger off people's faces, right? This thing that's killing all of us in our industry here in the Hollywood. And as we talked about before on this channel, The Atlantic is utilized specifically to create cultural narratives and shift cultural narratives amongst the elites of America, beyond Hollywood, just sort of the cocktail party crowds throughout the country, right? New York, San Francisco, other places. And they have been the ones that have largely guarded the narrative on a lot of the health issues that we're all facing and how the government's reacting to that. But they've also been the ones guiding the narratives now recently on some of this Hollywood cultural stuff. And that's all coming from above. This isn't some reporter at The Atlantic going, here's something I want to talk about. They're getting instructions from their editors who hang out at cocktail parties with some of the more famous people who are saying, this would make a good story, don't you think? Yeah, and so it's being seeded.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they probably figured out that we'll soon have a situation where the lunatics are running the asylum if we don't quell this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
And it's purely for money. It's not, I think if they would made money, they would be happy to continue the woke path because that is where their hearts are.
Yeah. And then we had, I think this is the final one, Eric Winberg. This is a nice one to round out with. Says, hail and happy Friday, y'all.
Happy Friday.
Yeah. And
so we're all
with
caught up?
that, we are fully caught up.
Wow. Well,
so
was there any other
with
topics
that,
we had to address? Or
we have to address this super chat, but I think we're all out of comments. Robert wonders, what would have to happen in order for Jon Favreau to comment on Gina and KK? Kamran?
I think you'd have to have Ragnarok. You'd have to have the end of the world. There's no reason for him to do it. It would only hurt his efforts to try to save Star Wars. This man is incredibly politically savvy. He understands how the club works. He understands the political situation. There would be no benefit to him whatsoever to speak up on this topic. It is the only benefit is for him to do everything he can behind the scenes to make Star Wars good. I'm sure that he did reach out to Gina Carano. We've got that sort of indication where, there was rumors that we were hearing that he was ready to beg Gina Carano. I think our friend Doomcock, and I think on this channel we've heard these rumors that he was ready to beg Gina Carano. Then Gina put out this very strange post on Instagram saying it's too late for begging, which was just a very bizarre thing to put out, or on Twitter. So I'm sure he did approach her, and she may have declined, or at least declined as long as Ms. Kennedy's there. And he's not going to get involved publicly in this. It's just not who he is. He's too savvy for that.
I honestly don't think he even, I'm sure he's reached out to her, but I think he's smart enough to know that she's way too much of an individual to bow to that. And I think she's made that pretty fucking clear that she's going forward and not about to look back.
Yeah. If I can't speak for Ms. Carano, but I wouldn't surprise me if, she said, I'll come back if we get a public apology, which I don't think Kathleen Kennedy will ever do. So, and I think if she got a public apology, I wouldn't be surprised if she'd say I'd come back. But that's just something that it's all about preserving Kathleen Kennedy's face.
Going off of what you're talking about too, Cameron, like what you and Script and Andre have kind of alluded to and come around to, is I think he's seen it as it's a loss and he's got to move past it and there's nothing he can do about it. But going forward now, even if we believe, Mikey Sutton's rumor that KK is coming back, I believe it's
which is now backed up by WTW.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think it's just basically, it's more so that he knows she's defanged. There's nothing more she can do. He's not necessarily maybe in the driver's seat right now, but he's definitely the navigator, right? Yeah. So I feel like he's just kind of. I think you're right. I think he knows that it would not help his position at all right now, so he's just better off letting it go. You know what I mean? Like
there's no benefit to him. There's just
exactly.
Nothing good can come out of dealing with this right now. He's just got to go on and do the best he can with the cards he's got. And maybe Ms. Carano's no longer a card in his pack, and that's fine. He's got to move on.
I think that's the case, and I think he realizes that probably.
Yeah. And then look, the Star Wars universe is big. You don't make a Rangers of the New Republic. There's a lot of the stories to explore, and life goes on.
Yeah,
there you go.
Indeed, and the show also must go on right up until it's the end for today, and we're getting
close to that.
So with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone in the chat who's been watching us today. We couldn't do what we do without you guys watching, being here, commenting, just making this a great community. Thanks for all the help in managing the chat to the moderators. We also couldn't have this awesome place without you guys. And also, Kamran, thanks for joining us once again. And everyone, do check out Kamran's webpage and Patreon. Links to both are, of course, in the description. But tell us, what can people expect to find at your Patreon?
Well, I already have several articles that deal with some of my adventures and how I dealt with the club, which I think a lot of people found very insightful, how I personally encountered the club and how it blocked some of my projects. I've done some analysis of things like the Disney Civil War that I think people found very intriguing, and I went to a lot more detail than I've even gone to in this video. What's also coming up is, like I said, I have my third novel, which I'm pre-releasing before it is published. I'm putting it out on Patreon, and I'm putting out another chapter today. So if anyone wants to join, you'll get my third novel, which is The Biblical Tale of Esther, which I think has been really interesting in the narrative for some time now, because a lot of people around Trump and whatever were talking about Esther last year. It was very interesting, but I've written the novel before, so that's coming out, and I'm going to have coming up hopefully within a couple of days, just have to finish writing it, a lengthy piece which is going to go into my screenwriting methodology, which I actually teach. I've taught at seminars at University of Chicago and Columbia University and other places. So if any of you want to be writers, you can come there and get a sense of how this is the methodology I came up with myself, and I sold my first script based on my own methodology of how to structure a script, and I followed that now for 20 years. So I think I've got a pretty good system there. So that stuff is coming up, and if you can come to my Patreon, it means a lot to me, because what it does is everyone who supports me actually gives me the resources to keep fighting this battle here in this town, right? I mean, I'm a little bit, especially now that I've come on channels like Andre's here, Midnight's Edge, it makes me more of a target than I was before, because now I'm talking public about things that are generally kept private. And so the more independent I can be of this system, the more ability I have and leverage against it. So everyone has been, we've only been on for a few days, and we already have well over 40 subscribers. And so I appreciate that, and I hope many more come.
Yes, all right. Tom, was there anything else that people should have on their radars?
Well, I mean, you probably have heard the rumor that there's a guest coming on FNT later. I'm sure that Gary and the rest of us would appreciate if you guys head on over there and check it out. I don't know if you've heard, but you may not have heard of this person. They're just like a pundit. But Alex Jones, if you've heard the name, you may want to check it out.
Somebody like
so yeah, they're pretty excited about that.
And I sent Andre this message. We need a certain actress named Riley Reid, who I just discovered married a guy named Pasha, because the universe has a sense of humor.
Yeah, it's fun how that works sometimes.
From someone, I was quite a fan of her work, and she married a guy named Pasha.
And yeah, so that show will start actually early. So they'll be starting here in about a half hour. So, so
everyone should head on over to Friday Night Tights. It'll
tell them Midnight's Edge sent you. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you to Cameron, as always, for being here, and you guys in the chat for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And of course, the Wrenches, as always, for doing a great job. And thank you so much for all the donations and sharing and the likes and all that good stuff. Even if you disliked the stream, make sure you tell us in the comments why you didn't. And with that, Andre, I turn it over to you.
Yes, because with that, I believe, throwing it straight back to Tom, it's time for some koalas in the rain.
The rain's turning the koalas gay.
Koalas in the rain, no fucks given.